Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 76.
Well, Ben, this feels like it's going to be fairly predictable because as 76, like one of the only things I can actually even talk about is 1776.
But that's not 76, that's 1,776. You think we're going to stop the podcast?
Are you really?
What are you going to say when we get to that number?
I will apologize profusely on this platform.
All right.
I made a mistake 1,700 episodes ago when I said we weren't going to make it to 1,700 episodes.
We do tend to shorten it for like the basketball team. They're just the 76ers, so I'll let you get away with it.
Hang on. Now you've got me thinking because we do 26 episodes a year. So to do another 1,700 episodes, we're talking... Oh, okay, Ben. As long as we're doing this podcast for another 65 and a fourth years, I think we'll be fine.
We'll be 110.
Hey, we should. There could just be digital versions of us doing the podcast at that point, rehashing the robot apocalypse and all kinds of nonsense. Anyway, man, we strayed far afield. 1776, Ben. What was important about that date?
Well, I read a book called 1776, and it was not good.
So, for all of you non-Americans out there, 1776 is widely celebrated as the year that our great nation was born because on August 2nd, 1776, the Founding Fathers, or who are considered to be the Founding Fathers, signed the Declaration of Independence, which is the document that basically told Britain to shove it.
So the book that I read is by David McCullough, who's a notable historian. I love his work. I highly recommend his book, The Wright Brothers, to anyone that talks about the invention of powered flight. And so when I picked up the book called 1776, I thought I was going to be reading a book about the American Revolution. No, it was about the calendar year 1776 AD, starting in January and ending on December 31st.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, one thing that I think is interesting that I learned in college history that I hadn't thought about before was that everybody that signed this declaration, it wasn't like the United States was this cohesive, economic powerhouse back in the day. It was just, a bunch of idiots out in the country saying we don't want to pay taxes anymore. And so everybody that signed this document was essentially signing their own death warrant. They're like, hey, here is a list of the most influential people in this burgeoning new democracy that are telling you to your face to shove it. Like, these guys were, like, number one wanted state enemies when they signed this thing.
If they'd failed to establish their own government and security, you're right, they would have just ended up either executed in the town square or in a British prison or sent to Australia.
So a lot of these men fought in the Revolutionary War. Others served as heads of state, and most of them went on to be very important in American history in one way or another. But I just want to bring this up, and I'll be done with 76, is of the 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence, only 9 of them actually died in the Revolutionary War, which is,
wow.
Remarkable considering the fact that they were like public enemies at this point.
Great success.
That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, cool. Well, since last time I kind of told the story about how my family's penchant for at-fault auto accidents had got me fired by my insurance company, one of our listeners actually went on our subreddit on reddit.com/r/badatmagic and had given me some advice. So this past, during the intervening time since we recorded episode 75, I'd gone and I'd done some research and I found out something, and I also need to thank Reddit user Jim. And that is, Josh, I had been overpaying for auto insurance.
By what amount? By what fraction? Like multiples? Orders of magnitude? What are we talking?
Double-digit percentage.
Ooh, that's no bueno.
Yeah, so you know what they say on the commercials. Switch now and you can save...
Whatever.
Yeah, on auto insurance. So... Yeah, I did some research, and actually, I'll be able to get insurance again, and it'll be fine. Everything's fine. The panic can end.
Are you insuring these other children, or are they on their own?
No. I'll be able to insure the kids.
At least until they get another at-fault auto accident under their belt.
What is this? You always do this. You're projecting this, like, this worst-case scenario into the stratosphere.
And then I won't be negatively impacted when it happens. We've talked about this. This is my default view of the universe. I can only ever be pleasantly surprised.
All right, well, let's talk about your remodel of your backyard. I want to know, how's it going? All I saw was some pictures of you, like, with your sweat glistening off your bulging biceps as you smashed a cinder block wall with a sledgehammer.
Ben, we're going to get demonetized. All right, so I don't know if I mentioned this, but we finally bit the bullet, and we are going to remodel the backyard. The yard has been terrible since I've been here. There was one spring where I made a real go.
Yard is a strong word.
I made a real go at trying to replant grass. Like,
it's
I watered
pool
it
and
twice
some
a
dirt.
day. You're killing me, Smalls. Like, let me lay my claim here. I tried to make it a real yard at one point and failed miserably. Like, the only thing that grew was weeds. And yeah, I'm over it and I'm sick of it. And so we're finally going to take the time, the money, and the sheer effort of will that it's going to take to remodel the thing. Put the money down with a landscaping company. They're going to do pavers on the back patio, and they're going to put artificial turf down everywhere. But while we're doing this, my wife and I decided, well, let's take a hard look and decide if there's any changes that we want to make. And so there was, like, the old people that lived here they had extended the patio out. Like, so they poured extra concrete for another, 8 feet away from where the house ends. And I want to slap the guy that did it because he's a complete moron. They sloped it so that all of the drainage, like, all right, your back porch, listeners, go to your back porch. Guess what? It slopes away from your house. This idiot, took the addition that he poured and sloped it towards the house. So now my patio was like a taco, and there was this big line in the middle. So anytime, it doesn't rain a lot in Arizona, but whenever it did, my back porch was just a lake because all the water was flowing to the center of the porch.
Wow.
Why? That's so dumb.
I mean, he wouldn't be like, I think this should slope towards the other. It'd be like he started digging and it got really hard, and so he just stopped digging and thought that looks good enough.
To be fair to him, if he wanted to keep the same grade of the original porch on the extension, then there would have been like an 8-inch step up to get to the pool area. Yeah. And so that's why he didn't do it. But here's the trick. Don't pour the extra concrete in the first place. Then the water just drains there, and it's fine. Whatever. So anyway,
okay, hang on. I love this self-righteous speech about sloping concrete. Do you know how close you were to doing that in your own shower?
I was so close to doing that in my own shower that I jackhammered it up when I realized that I had messed it up and did it over, Ben. Okay. Because you do it right or you do it twice. This guy just did it the once, and it was broken and half-assed. Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing.
Yeah, and I want to say that in the way that a friend of mine in the Army when I was down in Florida said, there's 2 ways you do things in the Army, right and again.
Yes. So I prescribe to that quite a bit, and there are a lot of things that I have to do again. In this case, I'm doing the things again that the last guy did wrong the first time. So anyway, we're replacing that entire extension of the patio. We want it gone. We're just going to replace it with artificial turf. Like, it's going to be an extension of the yard to increase the amount of green that we get. But that means I had to – the landscaping company quoted me an absurd price for doing the demolition. And we're talking I'm saving 20% on the total price of the project by doing the demolition myself.
Hence the glistening biceps.
Hence the – dude, settle down. You're going to get people in a tizzy. No, all right, so we had 2 built-in barbecues in the absolute stupidest places that they could possibly be, and then this extension of the patio. And rightfully, the landscapers didn't want to deal with those because it's big, heavy concrete. So my brother has a full-size jackhammer because, of course, he does. And he let me borrow it, and I spent...
pneumatic or electric?
Electric. But it's still full... I mean, like, it weighs 90 pounds. Like, this is this is not your dad's jackhammer. This is, like, construction-grade material stuff.
Okay.
And he let me borrow it for about a month now. And the barbecues went down pretty easy because they were just cinder blocks. So there's this great sequence of photos where I'm standing up on top of this built-up thing, and slowly over the course of a few hours, the pile of rubble just gets shorter and shorter as I break it down and haul it off. My son helped quite a bit. So good on Carter for going out there with his gloves and his earmuffs and picking up a couple of rocks here and there. The patio was more of a pain in the butt because those slabs are like 5 inches thick. And so I just used the jackhammer to like score lines in it like you would on pottery or something. And then you smack it real hard and then it kind of breaks along the scores. Huh. And then I'd end up with I've got some great pictures of a giant pile of like 90 to 100 pound slabs of concrete that are about 2 feet by 2 feet. Because
that feels like just the start of the problem. You still got to get rid of it after that.
Oh, yeah, that's the problem that I'm facing now. I have this enormous pile of concrete, and I called one of those junk removal services. I'm like, hey, how much do you get rid of this concrete? How much do you got? Quite a bit. Send me some pictures. And I texted him some photos. He's like, ooh, it's going to be about $900.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's not a reasonable answer to this question.
Why is it 5 inches thick? Is that how much concrete you normally pour?
For a patio? Yeah.
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 Jeez.
Haven't you ever jackhammered up a patio, my friend?
No, and neither have you until just now. And I
knew it was that thick, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've been around when they were pouring patios, I guess.
Well, you were making me think about how this falls in that category of things in life that you're kind of aware of and you think you can do, and then the first time you do it, you actually have to just figure out how. Like, I'm sure you tried one thing and that wasn't quite right, so you tried something else, and then you changed it a little bit, and you kind of settled on something. Maybe that's still not the ideal, but it was good enough to get the job done.
That's true. For the first 20 or 30 minutes, I kind of floundered figuring out how to jackhammer this concrete because like like I said, the barbecues came down real easy because they were cinder block and they just disintegrated under the jackhammer. This is patio concrete that was 5 inches thick. Like I tried to break it into chunks like I was doing before, and it kind of laughed at me. So I had to figure something else out. And the cutting it into like a big waffle style grid and then breaking it into those pieces, that worked best for me.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if that lends itself to the next phase in the operation.
Which is getting rid of all this crap. And I think what I'm going to do is just rent a dumpster and just have them put the dumpster on my driveway for like a couple days. That should be $300, $400, $500, something like that.
As opposed to $900. I could see. Yeah.
I again will have to haul all of this concrete from my side yard into the dumpster, but whatever. Let's set this up so you have to do this in August in Arizona. So, okay, I have two thoughts on this topic. One is that it is a wonderful workout. Like like you're talking about the sweaty biceps. Like I got I got that side eye look from my wife a couple times to the backyard window.
Nice.
Because I'm out there doing manly man work with a jackhammer. A couple times I would do it in slow motion just for her benefit. You know how it is. And then the other end of this spectrum is I was like on the verge of passing out, hauling these concrete blocks to my side yard thinking, this is the kind of stuff they used to have like convicted inmates do for punishment. Move rocks from one place to another.
Right. Or middle America, middle income people that want to remodel their backyard and not have to pay too much for someone else to do it.
There's some comedian that has a whole bit about how he's going to open a CrossFit gym for middle-aged housewives, and he's just going to have them go work on a railroad. Just laying railroad ties down or something and call it a workout, and they're all going to be for it. Yeah, we're paying you money to do this.
Yeah, nice. The Tom Sawyer gag is alive and well in 2022. One of our Reddit users asked the question, and I actually didn't know the answer for you. I know the answer for me, and that is, are you currently playing or do you intend to play Elden Ring?
No. Segment over. Moving on.
No. So that was a no for me too, but I felt like it deserved a little bit of an answer beyond that because I know you play lots of games. I'm a little bit surprised that you don't play it and you don't intend to. So I was aware that this was kind of the next big open world fantasy game. So I went and watched a trailer of it. It looks cool, I guess. I've watched my son play Dark Souls, and I don't think I'm interested in this particular game. But I asked myself a fundamental question. It's the part of me that was the kid that used to think when I was a grown up and I had all the money I wanted to buy all the video games I wanted, that I would spend more of my time playing video games instead of less. And that is probably Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I think you played all the way through, right?
I did. I actually played that one to completion.
I just have not. I have and I feel like that's the one standing in my way of doing anything like playing Elden Ring. Like, if I'm going to do any open world fantasy game, it's going to be Breath of the Wild before it's going to be Elden Ring. And I haven't done Breath of the Wild, and I'm not likely to, so I'm never going to play Elden Ring.
Well, I mean, and that makes sense. So, for me, this is very easily summarized, like this transition you're talking about as you get older, and like the money is there, but the time isn't. And I can easily illustrate this with pictures of the games that I have, because I still bought for the longest time. I bought games the old-fashioned way, where you actually went to the store and bought a physical thing that you could hold in your hand. That was the disc for the game.
Right.
And so the stack of PlayStation 2 games that I have from when I was single, and then I got a Wii. Yeah, I think I got a Wii. And then the stack of Wii games that I have, And then I got an Xbox, and then the stack of Xbox games that I have. And then I got an Xbox One, and the stack of Xbox One games. Like, each generation of console that I bought, the stack of games that I own for that console decreases at least by half. And I think my Xbox One, I think I have like 2 or maybe 3
So you
games
could create almost like a physical approximation of a bar chart.
Yes.
Of Josh's decreasing video game habit.
Well, console video game habit, I guess. I do. You mentioned, like you said, oh, you play a lot of games. I really don't, actually. Not right now. Like, I have a handful of games that I try to squeeze in when I can, and the rest of the time, I'm just working, man.
All right. Did you play, what was the one that they always make about getting shot in the knee and, like, you wake up? There's always
Skyrim, yeah.
Skyrim. Did you play Skyrim?
I did play Skyrim, yes. But
okay, so you played Skyrim.
I played that came out when before, like, right when my son was born, though. So, like, that was a different time.
Is it that old? Holy crap!
Yes, man, it is that old.
I've never played Skyrim. I don't know I don't know the subgenres of these games anymore since they've kind of blossomed. Like, are Skyrim and Elden Ring virtually the same thing? Elden Ring's just the highest tech, most recent version.
Without having played it, what I can tell you, like, I do keep up or try to keep up with the games industry, and they are similar but in different subgenres. So they're both open world, like go explore and do whatever you want kind of things with a linear progression that you can follow if you want, or side quests or whatever. The difference is the Skyrim is like a standard Bethesda RPG. So I don't know how to explain it any better than that. Like the combat and things, it's kind of linear in its progression. It's a game, and it feels like a game. Elden Ring is following the path of Dark Souls, where Dark Souls is the subgenre of game where people think difficulty is fun. And not like difficulty like, oh, I have to be good at this game to be able to beat it. But like difficulty like, if I beat my head against this wall enough, I'm going to start flicking the paint away. And it's going to be either me or the wall that dies first. And that's kind of what the Dark Souls thing is.
Right. It just has this notoriously punishing combat mechanics where you can't just brute force your way through beating enemies. You actually have to learn their timing and weaknesses.
Yes, it's insane difficulty is where that is. And that's kind of what the Elden Ring model is. Yes, it's a big open world and you can do what you want, but there's going to be random enemies that you walk up to like on the street that can pound you into the dirt. Okay, yeah, not interested. No thanks. Well, I mean, that there's a ton of those subgenres of games that I have no interest in. Like there's a huge rallying right now around work simulators. Like one of the best-selling games of last year was Farm Simulator 2022. Wow. Okay. I mean, I played Railroad Tycoon like way back in the day, and then Civilization. No, dude, no. There's no game mechanics here. Like you have a farm and you buy farm equipment and you farm, and like you can take side jobs like, oh, I need somebody to mow my grass for some money. Like, oh, do I have enough time to like weed my field of wheat and then also go mow this lady's grass to try to make ends meet? Like, I know we've talked about this at length on the podcast, but Josh, you recommended to me a work simulation game that I tried and felt like a soul-sucking, horrible job. You are talking about Papers, Please. I know you are. I totally am. But Papers, Please is fantastic because it tricks you. It gives you this, what you see as a work simulator, and then it weaves this intricate story into it in such a way that you really start caring about stuff that there's no reason you should be caring about. Yeah, but there's like a barrier to entry that I wasn't willing to pay. It also had punishing gameplay. Like you just have this shortened time that you're supposed to be processing people through this border checkpoint, and you're supposed to be checking their name against the documentation that they hand you, and you check their photo, and you're supposed to look at the expiration date, the point of origin, and every day they pile more and more stuff you're supposed to remember on top of you. I know I'm describing exactly what the designers want you to feel. It just feels hopeless and you're messing up, and you're not making enough money, and you're not processing enough people through the checkpoint, and you're making mistakes, and you're getting in trouble, and it was just, I was like, I can't do this, and I quit. Everything that you're talking about, though, is exactly what the creator of the game wanted you to feel. I know. They wanted you to feel like that guy in that booth when these people started coming through. When the woman comes through with the sob story about, oh, you just let my son through, please let me through, and her stuff is messed up. Now, you are actually embodying the person. Like, lady, I just sit in this booth all day. Like, I don't have time for your nonsense. Or do you show empathy to this person knowing that you're going to get in trouble for it?
Yeah, if I let you through this checkpoint with this crappy paperwork you just handed me, I'm going to get fired, and then I won't be able to feed my family, and my heat's already cut off.
Yes, and that's the beauty of that game, because it really, you can play Breath of the Wild and you can like it as much as you want, but you're never going to feel like you're the one actually holding the sword. Like Papers, Please, right. You feel like you're holding that stamp that says yay or nay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll give you that, even though it's got that kind of blocky retro graphic style.
Papers, Please, still highly recommended.
All right. Josh, I learned a new fact this week. I want to run it by you and see if you had the same reaction I did. Who is the top grossing actor of all time? What actor is the top grossing actor of all time?
Okay, so I'm going to ask some follow-ups. So one, I'm assuming that it's not going to be somebody that I immediately think of because you're asking me this question.
Yes.
So it's a non-obvious answer. Second, are we talking actor? Like it's a male person?
It could be male or female.
It could be male or female. Okay, we're using the gender neutral. I assume it's not a big Hollywood star. I'm going to assume it's somebody that's been syndicated on a popular TV show to death. And so I'm going to say one of the Friends.
Okay, good guess. This would just. I'll give you one more classifier, and that's we're just talking about movies.
Oh, okay. Then it's going to be somebody that's been in a lot of movies. Danny Trejo.
Great guess. It is Stan Lee.
Stan Lee? What?
Stan Lee has to his credit, 49 movies in which he just, shows up for 10 seconds and does a cameo. And because he's in those movies, and those movies have grossed $30.6 billion in the box office, Stan Lee is the top grossing actor of all time.
Because Stan Lee showed his face in like basically every Marvel movie. All right, that's a wonderful legacy for Stan Lee to have.
I know. He's dead now, so his record is static, but he's got a good lead on second place.
What? Totally approve. That's great. I love that. Thank you, Ben. That made me feel good about just the world.
Now, if you start to parse that list a little bit and look into it, there's other ways you can count. Like if you count by if they're the lead role, it's actually a woman. Do you want to guess who it is? You might have a poster of this person in the room where you're sitting right now.
Oh, is it really Scarlett Johansson?
Yeah, she's in first place with a slight lead over Robert Downey Jr. If you count by ticket sales, because things get blown out of proportion by most recent movies because of inflation and changes in ticket prices, then that sends you way back into like old-timey movies, and Clark Gable has sold way more movie tickets than anybody alive today.
Yeah, well, Hollywood was different back then, and Clark Gable probably filmed 12 movies in the course of 3 months while he was on set.
Yeah, but I think it also is. He was also the star of Gone with the Wind. It's one of the top, movies of all time. There's lots of other ways to measure. By some measures, you could put Harrison Ford atop the list of the domestic box office, or you could. Yeah, but Stan Lee is alone if you're just measuring by an actor that's in a movie that's made the most money.
Hang on a second. How bored were you that you fell down into a spreadsheet of box office grosses? Like you just told me, like I'm imagining you staring at an Excel spreadsheet that you pivot tabled and like rearranged 5 different ways to have that discussion. Like,
yeah,
where do you?
Well, see, your instinct that when I ask you the question to ask like 4 qualifying questions was good. You just missed another 3 qualifying questions. But yes, lots of data.
Yeah, why? What happened in your life that you decided, like, you know what? I'm going to make the world's most complicated spreadsheet about Hollywood actors, and just spent an afternoon doing it.
I'm going to remain mysterious about this one.
Jerk.
It is time for Bad at Logic.
Excellent.
Let's get out our critical thinking cards, and because it's an even number episode, we'll do a logical fallacy today. Today's logical fallacy is black or white.
I really like this one, Ben. This is something that I refer to as the false dichotomy.
Yes. I'll read the definition on the card, where 2 alternative states are presented as the only possibilities, when in fact more possibilities exist.
So, Ben, my kids wanted to watch all of the Star Wars movies, and we were watching Episode 3. Just the worst. And there was that scene. Spoilers for Star Wars, everyone. Yes. Obi-Wan comes walking down the ramp of that ship, and then him and Anakin are having this face-off, and Anakin goes, you're either with me or you're my enemy. And then I immediately pause the video and I go, that's actually a false dichotomy. There are many shades of gray in this scenario where Obi-Wan could fall into. There's many different allegiances and factions and motivations that he could have in this moment. Anakin is portraying a logical fallacy. And then I hit play, and then Obi-Wan goes, only a Sith thinks in absolutes. And then I paused it. Okay, Obi-Wan just made a logical fallacy there, because only Sith think in absolutes is an absolute.
Is an absolute, yes. Awesome. Well done. Good job bringing your children up right. I wonder if they were just sitting there absorbing that at the kid level, and you're trying to take them to like the college level.
Kids, listen, if you're ever faced with a bully, like you're either with me or you're against me, you will stop him dead in his tracks and you say, well, actually, that's not true. There are several different things that I could be feeling at this moment, and none of those necessarily are with or against you.
I think why it's important to be aware of this logical fallacy of the black or white is it's a way to try to trap your opponent. You present them with a false dichotomy and then ask them why they can't make a simple decision.
Yes, it's either this or it's this. Well, now hang on a second. There's actually a whole bunch of different courses of action. These are just the two that you're identifying, and one of those is obviously a straw man that you're going to tear apart if I pick it.
Right. Oh, or I agree with you, and that I don't do. So let's take some time and take this apart a little. All right, we also need to do bad at English, and this week I want to do one. I went back and looked at my database of all the ones we've done before, and I don't know how, Josh, in the history of bad at English after 76 episodes, I've never done the word cheeky.
I feel like that's the quintessential British term.
Isn't it? So it dates back to the mid-1800s, and they used to use it primarily in the noun form, cheek. And the word cheek in that usage was like to give, to be... the act of being sassy or impudent.
Don't give me that cheek.
Yes. I told him to go up the wooden hill to Bedfordshire because he was giving me a bit of cheek.
I didn't get any of that except for the last bit.
Yeah, it means you sent your kid to his room because he was talking back. Okay, so they added E to the end and used it as an adjective form, and this word is delightful because recently it has taken on some new meanings. So the original form just meant like sassy, impudent, insolent, those kinds of things. It started to kind of morph to also mean like silly or irreverent, and then it's taken on a new form where it kind of means forbidden or unusual. I'll give you an example. A lot of my British friends used to say, we'd been out drinking all night, and I stopped off at the corner store and had a cheeky kebab.
Okay,
it's just junk food. It's like how they're just or what's one I saw a lot of? There were people that say, fancy a cheeky pint after work. So I'll read you this write-up I saw online that was really good, because here's a full laydown of what that means, fancy a cheeky pint after work. Effectively, they're saying, I know it's only Tuesday and I really should be rushing home to make something for dinner, or perhaps more virtuously going to the gym, but do you want to have a quick drink or two in the local pub before heading on to the torture chamber known as the Rush Hour 2?
Did you want to completely blow off all of our adult responsibilities?
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll have a cheeky pint on a Tuesday.
That's funny. Whenever I hear this term, all I can think of is Mary Poppins singing that song about medicine and sugar.
Yes, a spoonful of sugar.
Yeah, and she was singing to herself in the mirror, and her mirror was singing harmonically back to her, and then went on like a vocal solo, and she just stared at the mirror and like this nasty look on her face, cheeky, and then moved on.
Which is a great example of one of the few instances in cinema of the movie being better than the book. Another example I saw is I was absolutely wasted when I got home from work, so I snuck off for a cheeky nap. And the thing that the writer pointed out about that is that the nap isn't cheeky, the person taking it is. Like it's a sensible thing to do to take a nap, but like you said, kind of shrugging off your responsibilities. I found two other uses of the word cheeky. In Australia, they also use that to describe poisonous animals.
Oh, well,
cheeky snake.
No, poisonous or venomous? Let's be clear.
Oh my gosh, whichever one is correct.
Well, well, this is important because Australians might eat these animals, and so the poisonous is more important than the venomous.
Oh, okay, venomous then.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so a cheeky snake is different. A cheeky snake is different than a regular snake.
I love the accents. Keep them coming.
And the word cheeky is also used to describe clothing, in which case it means it displays your buttocks.
Oh, that's the American version.
It's a cheeky bathing suit.
Yeah, I 100% approve of all cheeky clothing for women in America.
Now, as I've pointed out, the etymologies and origins of these British words that we don't typically use frequently in America, the ones that have originated after the rebellion of the colonies are the ones that tend to be unique to the UK and not used in the US. But this one saw a slight rise in popularity in the late 80s because there used to be a character played on Saturday Night Live by Mike Myers called Simon. Have you ever seen old videos of Simon?
I don't think I have.
Okay, it's just Mike Myers as a grown man but acting like he's a little kid. And he sits in the bathtub and tells you about his life in a British accent. I'll put a link in the show notes of one of his videos. And one of his catchphrases was cheeky monkey.
Yeah, that sounds like something Mike Myers would do.
Yes. So link in the show notes. Cheeky monkey just means an impudent person, usually a child, and that is cheeky. We need to do a bit of Bad at Magic, Josh, here on the Bad at Magic podcast. We occasionally talk about the game of Magic. The first thing I want to talk about is there was a bit of, there's always, for those of you that don't follow Magic, there's always brewing. It's become a self-referential joke that every new thing that happens in Magic is going to be the death of Magic.
Well, that's you can extrapolate that to everything. It's like every old generation says the new generation is the worst that's ever come, and the end of the world is nigh.
Right. So, every time they make a change to the rules or the mechanics or the competitive play system or add a new digital client or whatever, everyone, there are prophets prophesying the end is near.
I have prophesied the end of Magic several times in this podcast.
So one that had kind of happened is that they changed something very fundamental. Magic typically releases new products where there's a box of new cards sitting on the shelf about 4 or 5 times a year, not to account like little promotional things here and there. And in the past, what they've done is, I don't know, maybe they put a lot of weight on the amount of energy required to come up with a new creative intellectual property, and so they would split it up. So if they were going to come out with a new world and they were going to design a new story and characters and stuff like that, instead of just releasing it in one set of cards of 256 cards, they would split it up and release it in one big set of 256 cards and 2 small sets of 140 cards. So that they took the story and world and stretched it out across most of a calendar year and across, almost 500 cards.
And that's what we used to call the blocks. Like there was Ravnica block that had the 3 sets. There was the Alara block that had the 3 sets. And that's just how things were when I was around. Now, I believe that the biggest shift away from that was not so much to do with the intellectual property and the coming up of new ideas. I think it had to do with the economics, is that there was always 3 sets. And like you said, the first one had 250 some odd cards, but the next 2 only had like 120 or so. And I think the sales numbers for those second and third sets didn't it made more sense to have one big set as opposed to having 2 follow-ons,
right.
Economically.
And I don't think it was because they were being lazy. I think it's just because it's difficult to produce. But as they've gotten better at doing it and their staff has increased and stuff, I think they just reached the level of scale where they could produce a large set every time. So the question is, what's the best way to do that? So they've experimented over time, but because the lead time on what they're doing now is so far out between what's actually coming out now. Like right now they're working on some future set that we don't know anything about, and the set that they just released this month was something they made a year ago.
Well, theoretically, they should have 3 or 4 sets in various stages of design right now.
Right.
Some that are like on the drawing board, and then in various stages of work in progress, all the way to this one's ready to release in like a month.
Right. So back in 2017, Mark Rosewater, Magic's lead designer, released an article he called Metamorphosis 2.0, where he basically said, because of some of the reasons you said and some others, that they were potentially considering telling us, if they're going to release 4 sets in a year, to have each of those 4 sets be a unique world and just do single set blocks.
Yes.
And of course, that's yet another thing where all the, prophets come out of the woodwork and predict the death of Magic the Gathering.
Well, like for the Forthroses out there like myself that actually really enjoy the story behind Magic the Gathering, the death of the 3 block like story arc within one world is kind of a bummer because now we get a set and there is a story in the set and it may or may not have anything to do with anything else that's going on in Magic. And so we've gone from this big like episodic serial adventure to little vignettes of Saturday morning cartoons that may or may not have anything to do with each other.
That's interesting. I've also experienced this, but I've had a different feeling about it, and that is, I felt like that when they were doing 2 or 3 blocks as part of it, 2 or 3 sets as part of a block, that I just had more time to absorb the story without having to, and now it's just happening too fast.
Yeah, so you get to ignore more of the story, and it doesn't bog you down at all.
Well, okay, so Mark Rosewater, in the article where he introduced all this, he kind of talked about, as you do when you're a corporate person trying to promote your product, you talk about all the positive things of the new thing you're going to do.
Right.
Which is that this would allow for fully contained worlds and more of them, that there'd be more consistent draft environments, and this is a big one. We don't need to go into depth in that, but basically when you would have a three set block, you would still end up opening packs from the first set when the second and third ones came out, and it just messed up
because of the design and the quota for the types of cards. Yeah, you had to open all the other sets to have a good draft environment.
Right. Yeah. So having self-contained worlds and sets allows for better drafting. And then, so this is what got all the criticism, is he talked about how since they've transitioned to this, the game has been more profitable than it's ever been. Now, he wasn't saying that was the only reason, and I think people are being too alarmist about that, but is profit a sufficient motivator or indicator of success?
No, because is that accounting for inflation? Is that accounting for costs? Is that accounting for the introduction of a new digital client where people can spend real hard-earned cash on buying literally nothing but electrons 24/7, 365 from their toilet? Like, that's probably a lot more to do with the profitability of the business than the block structure.
Yeah, so Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, which came out over the winter time frame, was the number 3 set of all time. And it was the first time a winter set had ever even broken $100 million. So it was the most successful winter set of all time.
I will tell you, Ben, I drafted the crap out of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
It was a great set.
It was a really fun set to play, yeah.
So the cons are, like you said, you don't get any more like small sets. You don't get the like stretched out story where you can, getting new revelations over time and stuff like that. It's just coming all at once. You could get whiplash. That's kind of what I've been getting a little bit like, oh my gosh, I barely finished with this like futuristic samurai world, and now we're off to retro gang world, and it's.
Oh, we're already past that. Yeah, it went to New Capenna, which I did not like the draft environment for at all. Yeah. I'm glad that is over, because now the new thing is the Battle for Baldur's Gate, which is a set that was specifically designed for not the standard format, which I find interesting. It was designed for the Commander format.
Yeah. And so, you could get a bit of fatigue from that. I'm experiencing that a little bit. And maybe you're returning to old worlds faster. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's funny how you and I joke about the old Kamigawa block being one of the worst, experiences of Magic in the history of Magic. And then the new Kamigawa block being top 3 all time, which shows that these guys are smart. Like, they're trying new things. They're figuring out what the problems are. They're not even afraid to go back to a place that was a disaster and show that they can do it right.
Well, not only that, but then this is another thing that benefits from not having the multiple set blocks, is having just the one set and then moving on, is the feedback loop is much faster now. It's much tighter. Instead of having to wait for the entire block to play out before you get legitimate feedback of, okay, what worked, what didn't, what can we incorporate into design for the work in progress right now? Because once you have a block that's in design, like, that's 3 sets. Like, once that reaches a certain point, you can't make changes to it anymore. And so the feedback loop is a lot longer. Like, the lessons learned from the original Kamigawa block probably took 2 or 3 years before they actually started showing up in the cards themselves.
That's interesting.
This is the same thing that is happening with Disney Plus and all of the Star Wars shows.
Ooh, good. We'll be talking about this later on. Okay, there's one other thing I want to talk about before we move on from Magic. So in any... Wizards of the Coast have long promoted the idea of a local game store. their methods for distributing product incentivize there to be some kind of local place where you can go and play with your friends, so that you have a place for it not just to be Magic, but also to be the Gathering. So they, only give the bulk distributor level discounts to you if you have a legitimate game store and you can prove it and you hold events and it's a place where people come and get together. So typically what happens is you'll go 1 or 2 days a week and play with your friends, and they'll put on officially sanctioned tournaments and give prizes, either prizes in the form of additional Magic cards or prizes in the form of store credit to the store that you're going to. So my local store gives store credit, and they give me a little card that it stores my store credit on. So whenever I win a couple of matches and then I get some store credit, I swipe my card. This last week when I swiped it, it showed that my total was exactly $69.00.
Nice.
And I swiped it and I looked at the display pad and saw that, and I looked up at the cashier and we had this bro moment. And I said, nice. And he was like, nice.
Excellent. What did you do with that $69 of store credit, Ben?
So I used it to register for a Double Masters draft. So the most recent Double Masters 2022, not to be confused with Double Masters 2020.
Now, hang on a second. I have to say this, because I was sending you spoilers, like they would leak which cards were going to be in Double Masters. I'd been sending you spoilers on that for weeks, and the responses that I got for you were so I couldn't care less. And then you drive me nuts. You drive me nuts.
Oh, Josh, you need. Okay, I know that you're smart enough to have comprehended what I said to you. What I said to you was not, I am not interested in Magic cards, nor was it, I'm not interested in Double Masters. Please repeat back to me what I said to you that I wasn't interested in.
I sent to you a handful of examples of, look at the reprints that are in Double Masters. Isn't this amazing? And you're like, I mean, I guess. And I dude, how can you not be excited? And you said, you tell me, you asked me specifically, what cards are you excited about, being reprinted?
You sent me a list of 15 cards.
Oh, it was longer than that. But I mean, I literally, at that point when you asked me that question, I scrolled through the entire spoiler, every card that was being released in Double Masters, and I typed you out every one of them that I thought was going to be such a good benefit to have it reprinted into Magic.
Apparently I can do that with box office film releases, but not with Magic cards.
Yeah, where's your brain at, man? This is why you're never going to make it as a Magic content creator, buddy. You're not dedicated. You're not,
no,
your soul's not in it.
I can't just look at a list of 250 cards. It just bores the crap out of me. But I can go sit in a draft pod. So let me tell you what happens.
Okay.
So because of the way Wizards prices this and the way that they've packaged cards at certain rarities, these packs of Magic cards are more valuable than a regular pack. So they cost more. They're about $10 each instead of about $5 each. So that's why they call it Double Masters, I guess, because it costs twice as much.
Well, rightfully so. They're reprinting some of the most valuable cards in Magic. So go ahead.
Well, yeah. So as I found out, I went, and normally what happens is my son and I go up and register at the same time, and then they charge us at the registrar entry fee. In this case, since it's a draft format, you pay for the packs that you're about to open in, a little bit extra for prize support that gets distributed amongst all the players after the tournament's over. So it came up $50, and I was like, oh, that's a lot. And they're like, oh, is your son playing also?
Ho-ho! Bazinga, got you.
Yeah, so it was $100 just for 2 people to play this thing, and the place was packed. We had 48 players there.
Because they're reprinting some of the most valuable cards in Magic. I keep saying this, and it's like you're not hearing me.
So my friend next to me showed me, he's like, look at this. This card could be in one of these packs you open. And it was selling on the internet for $750.
No words. I've been telling you this for weeks, these reprints.
I know, but what's the point of looking at pictures of that for someone else? Because now I'm here firsthand. I'm experiencing it myself. So there's 48 players, and the store's having a crisis because they expected maybe 12. And they got 4 times as many as they expected. So it was 7 p.m. on a Friday, and they were looking at 7 rounds of Swiss, getting out of there at 3 a.m. at the earliest.
Nice. That's glorious. That's hardcore gamer moment right there.
Yeah, so they're like, all right, guys, we know probably not all of you signed up for this, so what we're going to do is we're going to break this up. And they're like, anybody that wants to stay late and play as many rounds as it takes to declare an overall winner, go to this side of the room. And anyone that only wants to play 3 rounds and cut your lot, and just if you got 3-0, you get prizes and leave, go to this side of the room. And it was about 50-50. And then that brought down the number of rounds that those other guys would play from 7 to 5, and it worked better for everyone.
Oh yeah, that cuts like 3 hours out of the day.
So I went to the 3 because I didn't want to stay there till 3 a.m. I've learned my lesson about that. And I sat down on my draft pod and I looked around the table, and there was a lot of people that almost never play Magic. And I know because I'm listening to the things that they're saying. They're like, how do we draft again? Like, what do I do? You know, and all around, like, without exception, like every one of the other 7 players at this table is just like clueless. Only one of them didn't have gray hair.
All right.
The kid across from me was like a 19-year-old college student, and I think the rest were either my age or older.
So this is when you lock eyes with your son. You both do a subtle nod to each other, put the sunglasses and the headphones on, and just know you're going to fleece these fools.
Yes. Okay. Josh, you went right to the right place, and this is the part that I want to talk about, and I hope everyone can relate to. I immediately knew in my head I was going to go undefeated and blow these guys away. 1, they were going to pass me the best cards, and I was going to get to have the most overpowered deck, and 2, I was going to outplay them and win easily. So the draft started. I opened up my first pack, and right on top is one of the most powerful cards in the history of Magic.
Oh, Ben, what'd you open?
Mana Vault. And it wasn't just Mana Vault, it was...
You opened Mana Vault in your...
It was the borderless foil Mana Vault. I looked it up in between picks, and it was going for $100 online. So much for my entry fee.
Okay, so I'm having a fangirl moment, listeners. Like, Mana Vault is in the vintage cube that we play like twice a year. It is definitively one of the best cards ever printed, and you opened the foil alternate art borderless, like creme de la creme, most premium version of it.
Yeah, it was great. I was very happy to see
Show
that.
it to me right now. Like, you put that damn card on the camera.
Okay, yeah. I got it right here in this binder that I use for keeping those kinds of cards safely. But like you said, I haven't. I should probably have it double sleeved or something like that.
No, absolutely. You should have it in one of those like solid card jackets with like a little sticker that was certified its freshness. USDA selected, FDIC approved.
So there it is.
Oh, tell me those little gold parts in the middle are foily too.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I'll put a photo in the show notes. Ooh. Anyway, so I knew my draft was going to go good when I opened up a $100 card, first pick, first pack. Now, this format, because of the way they package these packs and why they're more valuable, is they put 2 rares in every pack. And they decided that would feel bad in a draft, that if you opened up a pack and had 2 good rares, you'd only be able to pick one of them and have to pass the pack. So this format specifically requires you to pick 2 cards from the first pack and then 1 thereafter.
Very nice. I like that.
This was too complicated for my table.
Just the first one, guys. Listen, open it, 2 cards. Then it's just 1 from there on out. Like, not hard.
That was too complicated. Got all jacked up. So I was sitting there for like 5 minutes while they're trying to work it out, and I'm just kind of seething in my head. I shouldn't be. They were genuinely excited. They were enjoying themselves and stuff like that. It was a good time.
Yeah, settle down, Spike. You just wanted to get to the part where you get to kick everybody's butt.
I totally did. So I started putting together a really good blue-white momentary blink deck with just like with mole drifters and ether snipes. I even picked up a hostage taker. And hostage taker, when it comes into play, it steals their guy, and then you can cast it. And then I blink it and steal another guy and cast it too. So all of a sudden, every creature they've cast, I have.
That's fantastic.
It was, and it was great. So just as I predicted, first round I won easily 2-0. Second round I won easily 2-0. Third round I'm just sailing high. I get matched up against the college kid that sat across from me that didn't even know how to draft. And he roasted me game 1. Because I'm playing this deck that doesn't even start doing anything till like turn 3 or 4. He went 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop. Haste, haste, haste. Ooh. And he'd done like 15 damage to me before I even played a card.
Yeah, you're already way too far behind.
So I shuffled him up, looked at my sideboard and was like, okay, I need to regroup here. Maybe he just got lucky, and I kept a hand similar to the hand I had first time, but this time I had the information, and he roasted me again the exact same way. And I lost 2-0. Now, this was a bad matchup for me, just the kind of deck I'd built and the kind of deck he had.
Right.
But I think I could have beat him if I was really trying to do, like, if I had respected him as a player and respected his deck, I would definitely not have kept that hand. I would have mulliganed more aggressively. I'd have known what I was looking for. I would have played tighter, and I probably would have stood a chance.
I see. So you just fell into that trap where, like, your first two opponents didn't really know what they were doing, and so then you assumed the third one was going to be the same.
Yes.
Ben, you see, this is what separates you from the pros. The pros sit down. They don't care if they're sitting across from a 7-year-old kid. They're going to treat him as if he's Johnny Magic himself and like, think about every card that kid plays as if it's going to be their death.
Yes. And so I was, after this was all over, I was pondering my life lesson here. You know, what is it about my personality? And this is a podcast about games, life, and other things. I don't mean that like...
You're doing this again. You love taking these little snippets of magic and try to like, what can I learn from that and apply to my cosmic existence?
Do you not think that those kinds of propensities in a game would exhibit themselves in other aspects of your life?
So, yes. I mean, I understand that there are translations that you can make and lessons that you can learn that can be universally applied. I'm always so tickled by how you so deliberately look for them and then try to like process them in this formalized way, like throughout like your time on Earth here.
I believe deeply and profoundly that participating in games like this isn't just a mindless outlet. I think it's a mirror that reflects your soul. And I went into this and I felt gracious towards those other people, but I also wanted to pound them into the dirt. And I overestimated my own abilities and underestimated their own chances. And that led me to taking some chances I shouldn't have taken and making some decisions I shouldn't have made that led to my defeat.
That sounds like the lesson that every like 20-something-year-old guy learns when they finally figure out they're not immortal. Yeah.
Well, I apparently still need to learn that lesson. I need to stay humble, stick to the fundamentals, like you said, and then I won't get caught off guard by situations like that. I feel like at the heart of it is not underestimating people and not overestimating myself.
So, all right, let me ask you a couple of side questions that I would have loved. Like, if I would have loved to be in that draft pod with you so much. But, like, were you ever passed a card that was so profoundly good that you just had to, like, smack the guy sitting next to you? Like, no, give me whatever it is that you took and you trade it for this card because this is the one that you meant to take. Like, did that happen?
Yes, kind of. There was another thing that happened. In this set, Wizards of the Coast made a decision that they were going to include this land that could be used for any two colors in Magic, and you didn't have to decide until you built your deck.
Okay. Which land are we talking about?
I forget the name of it. It's a common land. It shows all 5 colors on it, and then it just has the symbols at the bottom, and it says, when you build your deck, circle 2 of these, and then this deck has those 2 colors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Land has those 2 colors.
Interesting.
So there's one or 2 of those in every pack. I ended up with 10 of them.
Oh. Guys, play multiple colors. That makes it so easy.
Yeah, well, it isn't that they weren't playing multiple colors. It's that they didn't understand it, so they didn't play it. Like, I played against a guy playing 3 colors, and I beat him terribly, and then I asked him to show me his card pool, and he had 4 of those that he hadn't played.
Like, what are you doing? You're playing... Yeah, okay. I can see what you're talking about. It's like, people get intimidated, like, if they're drafting something brand new. First of all, you need to know how to draft. Second of all, you got to read all these cards, and if you're not familiar with the cards, oh, man, this is a lot of text. Forget it. Skip it to the next one.
Yeah, so I ended up with 10 of those. And I played all 10 of them. That was the most I've ever played of a single card in a draft that I gotten. But I think it's because there was 2 in every pack, which meant there were 16 at the table, which meant I got 10 of the 16 of them. And they were all like last 3 picks.
Oh, man. Did they come into play tapped?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter, though, because you get to pick which 2 colors they tap for.
Right, exactly. So I had perfect mana every game, but my deck was just kind of slow. I was a turn slow against a slide deck, basically. Anyway, life lesson. Be humble, stick to the fundamentals, don't underestimate other people, don't overestimate yourself.
All right, so you paid $100 for this draft for you and your son. Did your son get anything valuable out of it, or did he do well?
Yeah, he got a couple good cards too.
So it sounds like you guys got all of your investment back and then some.
Yes.
Outstanding.
But as my wife likes to point out, that's not money in our bank account, that's store credit.
Okay, Alicia, if you're listening to me, I am an accountant, and I can tell you that if we were going to draw up a balance sheet for your household, these will be listed as an asset. Ben has a Magic the Gathering collection that goes right there underneath cash. They're not liquid assets, but they are an investment and a long-term asset, so they are worth something.
That was beautiful. We need to have more accountant corners like that. Thank you, Josh. You don't usually take my side, so that was great. All right, Josh, we need to do a double feature for our main segment today. We promised two things. One, that we would deal with a kind of in-depth question that one of our listeners had asked during episode 75 that we didn't have time for on that episode. And the other is that we have not taken time on the Bad at Magic podcast, of all places, and talked about the recent Star Wars television episodes on Disney+.
Whew, Ben, I feel like both of these have the potential to be a full feature on their own. So which one do we want? Which one do we want to shortchange by going second?
I think we're going to do Star Wars first.
Haha! Spoilers for Star Wars, everyone.
All right. Well, that's one of the things I want to take issue with. Can you spoil something if it's happening in the middle of something we've been learning about our whole life?
Yeah, you're talking about the fact that these TV shows are set between some of the movies that we've watched.
Yes, so let's talk about that first. But there's one bit of groundwork I want to lay. So because it's been a while since you and I have reviewed a movie or a new television show, and that is on the Bad at Magic podcast, we examine stories and games and life through the lens of magic. And so the basis that we use for that is Brandon Sanderson's 3 Laws of Magic, and plus 3 plus 1, and then we decide. Okay, so. In a magic system, there's hard magic and there's soft magic. Hard magic has specific, clear, understood rules and limitations where the reader, viewer, whatever, has a good understanding of how the magic works and what its limitations are. Then soft magic is vague and undefined, and any rules or limitations are never clearly explained. No judgment on hard versus soft magic. There's reasons to use one or the other. We just figure out which it is and talk about that and whether or not they used it well in the story. Sanderson's laws of magic are, number 1, an author's ability to solve a conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic. So there's a fundamental understanding that in order for us to follow the story that's being told, we need to understand the rules of whatever the magic system is.
If you have ever watched a sci-fi or a fantasy movie and then at the end it got wrapped up by something that wasn't previously explained in the film and you felt cheated or you felt dissatisfied or you felt like that came out of left field, that's what we're talking about.
That's a violation of Rule 1.
That's right.
Rule 2, the limitations of a magic system are more interesting than its capabilities. And that just means that it's much more interesting that your character does something awesome that happens within the limitations that were set up. They do something unbounded that doesn't follow the rules.
Superman is not interesting because he has no limits. Batman is very interesting because he's extremely limited.
And number 3, expand on what you've already said before adding something new.
Harry Potter, we're looking at you. Stop adding new crap. Just build on what you already have. Everybody's magic. You don't have to keep introducing random gizmos every movie.
Okay. And then Law 0 kind of supersedes everything. That sometimes you might have an idea that doesn't fit within these 3 laws, but err on the side of awesomeness.
Yeah, that's the rule of cool. If it's awesome, go with it anyway.
Okay, so having established that groundwork, let's look at the recent offerings from Disney. Okay. Now, Josh, would you say that we should do these in the order that they occur in the story or the order that they came out?
So I think we should do them in the order they came out because that's the order that we consumed them. And Disney knew that we were going to consume them in this order, and so they set things up in a certain way with that expectation.
You're giving them too much credit.
I don't know about that.
I did some research, and okay, so Obi-Wan came out last, but chronologically it comes first.
Right. So, but
they didn't wait to do it last because of some reason. That's the way it happened.
Well, Mandalorian came first, and then Boba Fett came after that, and Mandalorian plays a role in Boba Fett.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, those two do. Okay, that's fine. Do you want to start with Mandalorian then?
Well, I wanted to have kind of a. Is there any overarching administrative discussion we want to have in general about the shows?
I do want to say that. Okay, you got to understand the geopolitical forces at work here. in our lifetime, and that people will take this for granted in the future, we are transitioning from this very traditional, like you said, place where you go to the store and buy a DVD or go to the movie and watch a movie, to where the internet has become ubiquitous and high enough bandwidth that you can have cinema quality movies in your home. And all of the major companies are trying to become a first party provider in this space.
Yes, cut out the middleman and just reap all of the rewards of subscription services.
So just a few years ago, Disney bought Lucasfilm for like $4 billion, which I'm sure they've already made back and more.
Way more. Just toys. Good Lord.
So Disney became the owner of the Star Wars universe, and they're like, look, we can launch our own home-based streaming service that everyone will subscribe to. And yeah, we'll get a few folks by offering all of our back catalog that used to be those little like white clamshell VHS cassettes on everyone's desk, but in their living rooms. But we also need to offer new first-run content that's exclusive to our platform that will draw people in that they can't get anywhere else and that they don't already have at home.
So I will say Game of Thrones set this up. HBO has been doing series for a while where they do limited run, a handful of episodes, high production quality, longer run times, no commercials, and they take it very seriously and they do it very well. Game of Thrones, I think, was the first one that really broke into the wide knowledge, like the public in general zeitgeist. Like everybody knew about Game of Thrones, even if they weren't watching it. And
right.
it was kind of the proof of concept for this model for every other competitor in the space. Like, yes, you actually can have a big budget TV show like this that is grade A film quality and still reap incredible rewards from it.
Now, Game of Thrones was only available on HBO, but HBO didn't have a streaming service at the time. So if you wanted to watch Game of Thrones, you had to have cable television, and you had to have HBO subscription, and then you had to watch it at the time of week that it was on.
They did have they had a kind of pseudo streaming service, but the only way that you had access to their streaming service is if you had HBO through your cable provider.
Okay.
So
got it. So you could watch it on demand, but mostly the way it happened was the usual, like it came out on Sunday night, everybody watched it and was talking about it around the water cooler on Monday morning.
Basically, I did watch it streaming because I didn't have HBO on a cable service, but I knew people that did, and they were kind enough to share it with me.
Yeah. So
that was the proof of concept for these other companies.
Sure. Okay. I'll agree with that. So Disney is like, all right, we need to launch our Disney Plus service. The back catalog's going to pull people in, but it's not going to keep them paying. So we need to be offering new things. One of the things what they wanted to be their killer feature was a brand new, never before seen Star Wars property.
Yes. And
so
that was okay, go ahead. I don't know where you're going with this, so I'm not going to interrupt you.
So Kathleen Kennedy, the executive producer, storied one of the top executive producers of film content in the history of ever, said, all right, I own Lucasfilm. I'm working for Disney. We're trying to launch Disney Plus. We need to pull in customers. I want to do a new Star Wars property. I know a guy. And she hired Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni.
All right, so we cannot give enough love to these two individuals right now because they made Star Wars great again.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, we just kind of had the bad taste in our mouth of like the recent Disney film offerings of the new Force Awakens trilogy.
Force Awakens was a good movie, and then the other two were a train wreck. Like, yeah.
Okay, and so we had our hopes high that like when Disney Plus launched and we paid for it and got The Mandalorian, that it was going to be good.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah. So Jon Favreau worked with Dave Filoni and wrote this thing. Dave Filoni, I hadn't heard of him before. I knew Jon Favreau, of course, from like Iron Man and the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all that kind of, and the director of Elf.
Yeah, Jon Favreau has been in the background of Hollywood forever. Like you go back really far and you can see Jon Favreau hanging out in the periphery.
And then Dave Filoni, I found out, was one of the producers and directors for Avatar: The Last Airbender on Nickelodeon.
Glorious! It shows like yes, all the things we love so much. It turns out like the same handful of people were involved with them. That makes perfect sense.
Funny how that works. Now, Kathleen Kennedy doesn't have quite as good of a track record. She's got a spotty track record, let's say. It's not that it doesn't have good things on it, but it's like it's not consistently good like Kevin Feige, who's the #1 executive producer of all time. You know, if you look back at her resume, her first movie she ever produced was E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Ooh, that's good to have on your resume.
Right. And Jurassic Park is an executive producer. But then she also has clunkers like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, or the M. Night Shyamalan directed Avatar: The Last Airbender movie. Yeah.
I feel like the only people that even got... Yeah, never mind. We're not going to talk about Airbender.
You know that that YouTube channel with that guy, what's his name? George. What's his first name? Crap.
All right, I'm going to say
he does this skit where he's a director and a producer, and he interviews himself and it cuts back and forth.
Okay.
It's called
Pitch Meeting. Pitch Meeting. I've seen all of these.
Yes. So I imagine that she's like the person, the producer.
It's getting
like,
pitched
what?
too.
You want to make me money? Great, let's make money. Star Wars, that makes money. Make me a Star Wars movie.
So for Avatar, this is the only thing I want to say. Somebody needed to walk in the room while they were planning Avatar, The Last Airbender movie, and tell her, hey, you realize the only people that are going to come see this are people that love the show, right? Which means that the only people that are going to see this are the ones that are super dedicated to you getting everything absolutely correct.
Yeah, what a disaster.
It really was bad.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, she's had as many clunkers as hits. So there's just the possibility that when she's behind something, it's not going to have that like rich, well thought out overall storytelling. It might just be mass produced property branded with the Star Wars logo, hoping that you'll be fooled and pay for it.
In the video game world, that was called shovelware back in the day.
Yeah. So equal chances of getting a gem or shovelware. So we have the original trilogy, and then we have this time period defined on this timeline of about 10 years before the original trilogy. Whatever's going on with Obi-Wan Kenobi, we know we're going to get a story there, and then about 10 years after Return of the Jedi, and like what the world's like now in the power vacuum following the fall of the Empire and what's going on there. And that is where we pick up The Mandalorian.
Oh, The Mandalorian. All right, well, right before I'm going to start launching into the gloriousness of The Mandalorian, I have one more thing to point out. Again, when we were talking about earlier with the magic switching from 3 set blocks down to 1 set blocks, the same thing taking Star Wars and going from a giant Hollywood blockbuster that comes out once every 3 years, now you have a streaming show that comes out multiple episodes once a year. So that feedback cycle is a whole lot shorter now. And so you can really focus group the crap out of these shows. And I have a sneaking suspicion.
For better or for worse?
In this case, it's a double-edged sword, absolutely. But with the people involved, I think it's been for the better. For example, the Book of Boba Fett was 8 episodes? 7 episodes. And one of those episodes was basically a bonus episode of The Mandalorian. We didn't see Boba Fett in it not once.
Yeah. And maybe that was the result of those focus groups.
Yeah, it's like, stop it. We just want to see more of Mando.
We just want to see Baby Yoda.
And Grogu. Oh, man.
Okay.
Yes, I actually, so in the show notes, part of my notes, I broke down every single episode of Mandalorian because I love it so much. I'm not going to go into that level of detail.
I was wondering if you wanted to do that, but I do want to dip into the story a little bit. So we're going to this universe that they're assuming anybody that's going to pick this up already has some familiarity with the overall Star Wars universe thing.
Yes.
Blasters, lightsabers, the Force, interstellar travel, varied landscapes of planets and various inhabitable galaxies, all those kinds of things.
All right. I feel like we've talked about The Mandalorian before. We have to have on this show. So I don't...
We've only mentioned it. We've never actually reviewed it like this.
I feel like I've done this before. But all right, whatever. We pick up 5 years after the destruction of the second Death Star, and the Empire is still there because, shockingly, you kill one guy and a galaxy-wide empire doesn't immediately fall to pieces. It just fractures into little bits that are still floating around out there.
Fiefdoms.
Yes. Oh, that's the perfect word for it. Little imperial fiefdoms out there. And one of the best parts of the show is that stormtroopers are scary again. Yeah, they're still terrible at their job, but they're everybody. They're all legit. We're not talking about Like,
was that true in The Mandalorian? Okay, there was that one scene where they're sitting out in the desert, like guarding the ship, waiting for the guy to come back, and there's like a can in the desert, and they're shooting at it with their blasters and missing and missing and missing.
yeah, that was just fan service, 100%. But what I'm talking about is all the Star Wars movies. We are watching that from the perspective of like Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan. Like the opening scene of that movie is them taking down like everybody in a capital-sized ship, and nothing can stop them. Now that's scaled us back down to like the average Joe. Yeah, Mando is like the peak efficiency for what he is, but he's still just a guy. And
he's a stud, but he's just a guy with some nice armor.
Yeah, he didn't even have the nice armor at the beginning of the show. He had the same armor everybody else had, and it was like stormtroopers were a big deal, and they were a problem. And so it's nice to like scale this down. Like there's no more power creep, and like things are legitimate threats now. And there's so many like little snippets of the show that I don't want to go into detail, but like he's a bounty hunter. He gets a job to go find, just basically follow this thing and bring back the guy that's attached to the other end of it.
Would you say the intent is that Din Djarin, or however you say his name, is an iteration of the monomyth?
I'm going to call him Mando because I still can't pronounce his name correctly. So
fine.
I like that. Yes, I think it is. I think it absolutely It is the monomyth in that he goes through the entire hero's journey, and this is why we get so vested into this show. And I swear we've talked about this before because there are such great acting moments. And he is a faceless character. He takes off his helmet like twice in the entire series, and the rest of the time he is just there is no facial expression. But there is this moment where he is thinking about how it's like the third episode, or the third or fourth episode, where he turns the kid into like the baby Yoda. He turns it over to the Imperials, and he knows it's bad, and the kid doesn't want to leave. And he gets in his starship, and he's going to fly away, and like he sees this little knob on his lever that the kid had been playing with. And just the body language that came off this guy, like you can feel the character moment of like this was my job. It wasn't personal, but they're conflicting with this idea of like he just turned over a kid. Like that's not right.
Yeah. Pedro Pascal is a talented actor, and the challenge of like having to display this steely, emotionless personality, and yet still portray this fondness and connection to this vulnerable little creature, without being able to reveal facial expressions was very well done.
Yes, like him being a good actor sold it, and it's just we loved, like everybody loved, and whether or not you realize this, think about it, and you realize it was. You love seeing this indestructible man grow cracks and the love seep in, and you watched it happen in real time, and it was great.
Yeah, I agree. So what would you say the magic system of the Mandalorian
Are we just
is?
skipping? No.
Okay.
You're not allowed to cut my Mandalorian discussion short here.
I'm not. I'm kind of skipping to the end, but we'll go back to the middle.
So,
what are the rules? Because it's not the same. Like we are used to spending time with Luke Skywalker. Luke's learning to use the Force. Mando is not learning to use the Force.
No, they didn't. Like the first time the kid used the Force to help him, he had no idea what was happening. Right,
but there's no hint that Mando's going to learn to use the Force now or ever.
Well, there's no need for Mando to use the Force, but the fact that the Force still exists in this universe, and apparently it was so gone by the time the Empire had fallen that people didn't even know what it was, and so there is a magic system, but it wasn't pertinent to this story. Like, we're just talking about the technology or whatever the Star Wars stuff is, the things that we take for granted, the faster than light travel, the fact that there are some kind of material science that allows some armor to be better than others. There's a steel that can stop a lightsaber, for example.
Yes. Okay, good. I think that is part of the magic system. They're kind of teaching us the rules. Like, hey, there's this steel called Beskar, and it can stop lightsabers, and he wants it. He doesn't just want a little bit of it; he wants more of it, and then he wants to give it to his friends so that they also have it too.
We come to realize that it was important to their religion as Mandalorians, and it only came from one planet, and that's the reason that it was bombed in the first place. And they were a warrior culture. Like, everything about Mandalorians are freaking fantastic.
Okay, so they've kind of got a religion that they're following, and that's part of this story too.
Not even kind of. It is. They are a cult of like warrior monks that's what the Mandalorian is. That's what they have been since their prehistoric times on their home planet of Mandalore. Is they were warrior monks, and that tradition just kept going and following them right up until this part where they're interstellar like badasses, for lack of a better word. To the point.
Why do you feel like it was so important not to show your face? Why was that part of their warrior monk tradition?
Did you watch the second season of Mandalorian?
Yeah.
Okay, they made it very clear that there's only one, like that. Those are the hardcore, ultra right-wing zealots of the Mandalorian faith, are the ones that never take off the helmet. And they had a specific word for it that escapes me at the moment. But like Mando belonged to this really zealous right-wing group of the Mandalorians. There are Mandalorians that they're Mandalorians and they're trained and they do all the warrior monk stuff, but they're allowed to also live normal lives.
Maybe it was not meant to be sneaky, but that sounds like an approximation of some of the same things that exist among us in our culture. You know, how we have groups that are devoted to a certain ideal or religion or God, and some people that kind of distinguish themselves from those by doing additional things.
Yes, we have people that go to church every Sunday, and then we have monks, and then we have priests and nuns. Like, these are all different tiers of the amount of dedication you want to give to this ideal.
Okay, and somewhere amongst all of that is the Darksaber. How does that fit into all of that?
So what you're talking... All right, so I have to talk about this first. So
Okay.
There were several things that they did, and Jon Favreau, I love him to death for this. There was a Cartoon Network CGI show called The Clone Wars that ran for many years on Cartoon Network that was specifically the time period between Episode 2 and Episode 3. And Anakin and Obi-Wan were the main characters, and the first episode, Anakin gets a Padawan named Ahsoka Tano. And like this entire series is about them, about the Empire in the middle, in like neck deep in the Clone Wars. And that's just what all the plots are revolving around, is the conflicts that involved in that.
Were those characters voiced by Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor?
I don't think so. But anyway, the Darksaber and a lot of the Mandalorian lore was introduced to me originally through those cartoons.
Okay.
So the Ahsoka Tano, the Darksaber, all of these things were in the back of my mind as I'm watching this Mandalorian show. And like when it starts off and they're ticking all the boxes, like, you have to leave your weapons. I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of my religion. Yep, that's absolutely true. He's not going anywhere unarmed if he doesn't have to. Like they're just ticking the boxes of this continuity of intellectual property. Right. And then the last episode of the first season where freaking Moff Gideon, like his ship gets blown up and he crashes and he cuts his way out of the ship with the Darksaber. Like I gasped like a little schoolgirl in the room, and because it's the freaking Darksaber. Like there is no way that you can make a black lightsaber in this universe without like it has to be. That's the only thing it can be.
Okay. So, yeah, there are these artifacts that bear significance. That's part of the magic system that I'm talking about.
Okay.
They're getting to this idea that there's this weapon that either has religious significance or actual, like, physics significance, that it can do things that other weapons can't do.
So the Darksaber was the lightsaber that was constructed by the first Mandalorian to ever become a Jedi. And so It was made by the first person that kind of ascribed to two different religions and melded them together into this one weapon.
Interesting. So I didn't know all of that. My consumption of the ideas of Mandalorian culture came from Knights of the Old Republic, the game series on PC. And I don't know if that's canon or not. I think they're consistent, roughly.
I can't tell you if they are or not.
Because Knights of the Old Republic 2 very much focuses around kind of like trying to uncover the past of what happened to Mandalore and stuff like that.
It was glassed by the Imperium.
Right. Yes. Similar to what happened to Alderaan.
Yep. Like, oh, you all are too dangerous.
Okay. Mandalorian, I think if we haven't made it clear, was a fantastic series. You know, really well done. It was received well by the audience. It was considered 93% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's interesting to note the discrepancies between the critic reviews and the user reviews. The user reviews were 91%, so it was only like a 2% discrepancy, which shows that it really was good. It was what Disney was hoping it would be. It was that killer app for the Disney Plus launch.
It was so good. It was so good, and it transcended like everybody that I've talked to that has seen it liked it. My parents that don't care for Star Wars at all watched it and loved it. Like my siblings, everybody I've talked to.
It was fresh and familiar at the same time. You know, it followed the kind of formula of like an old Western.
Yes.
Where you just had this Lone Ranger going from town to town trying to accomplish his goal and getting his foot caught in the door everywhere he goes.
I swear we've had this conversation before.
We kind of have.
Listeners, if
we did after season 1. I'll figure it out in the show notes.
Listeners, chime in on the social media. I swear we've done this already.
Not all of it. Okay, so you had Pedro Pascal as Din Djarin. You had Carl Weathers, Giancarlo Esposito, Gina Carino, Nick Nolte. Just a really good ensemble cast. But the stakes were real. Like you said, the stormtroopers were dangerous. People were getting hurt. It wasn't just everything could just be hand waved away. So, and we didn't know what was going to happen. These are new characters, new story. Their destiny isn't known. So we're just finding out as we go along. This isn't like the prequels where we know that baby Anakin isn't going to not turn into Darth Vader.
Right. And you're right. Like, the stakes are high because death could be permanent in this universe.
Okay. And then there was a little bit of, touching and hinting at Boba Fett. Luke shows up at the very end, and that was nostalgic and awesome at the same time.
That was a great example of the power creep that I was talking about, because we found our heroes. Like, he assembled the best crack team of warriors that he could find, and using the skin of their teeth, they barely defeated the enemy, and then they found themselves trapped in an impossible scenario where they were all just going to die, and they knew it.
Yeah, Moff Gideon had those dark troopers that were just impossible to defeat.
They were Beskar armored droids, and they were punching through a blast door. You're done. You guys are toast. And then Luke flies in on his X-Wing and makes them all look like battle droids from Episode 1. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. When you're focused on the Jedi, there's no stakes. And again, it was kind of a Deus Ex moment where, the Jedi showed up and saved everyone. Yay. But the music swell and the feel, they earned it. It was Rule Zero. Yeah. It was super awesome.
It was rewarding. And it was the fulfillment of Din Djarin's quest. He was trying to get Grogu to the Jedi so that he could get trained in the ways of the Force.
Side note. The first episode where Baby Yoda was shown, and then he turned into this major character on the show. Everybody's called him Baby Yoda forever. There were so many Etsy knockoffs of this thing because Jon Favreau worked so hard to make sure that none of this merchandise was released ahead of time. So there was no officially licensed Disney merch for Grogu before he was shown on screen. And so all of these little independent shops got the jump on Disney when it came to trying to sell this stuff. And I can only imagine the sheer volume of cease and desist letters that had to be distributed.
Disney's lawyers were working overtime.
Yes. If you 9-year-old grandmother sew one more freaking Baby Yoda for your Etsy store, we are going to sue you into the ground.
So obviously they hit a home run when it came to profitable marketing, souvenirs and T-shirts and stuff. I don't know about you, but when I went to Disney World and went to this, Star Wars land, Grogu was freaking everywhere. I'll put a link to the Kevin George pitch meeting for Mandalorian, and he kind of goes. At one point, the producer gets actual dollar signs in his eyeballs.
I have a Grogu doll that's about a foot tall that sits in the background of every one of my virtual teleconferences when I work from home.
This is interesting. I wonder how many of our listeners have some form of Grogu merchandise, because this only came out 3 years ago, and it's virtually ubiquitous. They really nailed it. Okay, so the magic system is the Beskar steel, the religion of the Mandalorians, the mystery of the Force, the Dark Troopers, and then the Darksaber right at the end. I feel like you said, other than a little bit of power creep with Luke showing up, it felt like we understood the rules, we understood the stakes, and everything happened within the rules that were set up.
I think so, too. The Force is still wibbly-wobbly, really undefined, but Grogu didn't do anything that we wouldn't expect any other trained Jedi to be able to do.
Right, or even somebody that just was vaguely Force-sensitive to kind of try something.
Yeah.
Lift someone up, or
it never felt like they were doing anything to really break the rules.
Yeah, so I'm saying use of the magic system. This is soft magic.
Yeah, Star Wars is very soft magic, but again, it's not directly impactful to storytelling. It just kind of exists in the universe where they are, and so that gets a pass for me. I think it's fine.
I mean, there's a scene where he fights someone with a lightsaber with the Beskar spear, And it's important that you understand the rules of all of that in order for that to matter and have the stakes that it does.
Yes. You've been trained from the beginning of Star Wars that lightsabers are unstoppable. And all of a sudden you've got somebody that's blocking a lightsaber with a physical object. And that will blow your mind if you weren't aware of it.
Right. Okay. I think that's about it for The Mandalorian. You want to move on to the Book of Boba Fett?
Well, as a transition to that, we can say that in the second season of The Mandalorian, we saw Boba Fett show up without his armor in a couple of different times, like towards the end of the season.
Yeah, so Din Djarin gives Boba Fett his armor kind of out of respect and because he helped him out.
So in early season 2, Mando was on his quest or whatever, and he found a guy wearing Boba Fett's armor on Tatooine, and he was just a guy, and he put the armor on because like, oh, people think I'm a Mandalorian, and they don't cause as much trouble, and he was like the sheriff of his town or whatever. And Mando was like, you didn't earn that. Take that off. That's offensive to me and my religion. And they struck a deal, and hijinks ensue, and Mando got the armor as part of that deal. And
wow. The fact that you compared that to like a priest makes me think, what would that be like in the real world? Like if you went to a town and there was a guy who wasn't a priest, but he was wearing all of the
regalia.
All of the regalia, and people were respecting him because of that, but he didn't really have it. And you knew you were a priest, and you're like, dude, you're not a priest. You got to take that off.
Yeah. So go back and watch The Mandalorian, and every time, like when he's talking to that guy specifically, he goes, take that off right now. Like it hits a little different when you realize, oh yeah, this is the core of everything this guy believes. And he is going to rip your head off with his bare hands.
That's good. I think that's part of the magic system too.
Has to be.
If you think of it as a faith and that he's consistent in his observation and devotion to his faith.
Well,
and there are moments where he has to question it. Like there was a couple of times when he had to take off his helmet, and that was one of the things he was forbidden to do. That could be a substitute for anything arbitrary a religion asks of you.
Yeah. Oh, and again, props to Pedro Pascal as an amazing actor, because there was one scene where in the first season, he had to do it in front of a droid where he just kind of sat there for a minute. But there was another scene in the second season where he had to do it as part of infiltrating an Imperial base to not seem like he was out of place. Like he had to take his helmet off and interact with other people in order to pull this off. And again, it was this great character moment because, like this is against every core belief, but he's doing it because of those cracks, because he's trying to find Grogu and he's so desperate to do that. And it's just, he made this huge sacrifice for this kid, and it just makes you feel good inside.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, so now we know that Boba Fett is alive in this universe.
Well, Boba Fett's armor was spit up from the Sarlacc pit. We had no idea he was still alive until he showed up at the end of The Mandalorian.
Yeah. So we're off on the wrong foot, because I got to be honest, Josh. Boba Fett, when he was in Return of the Jedi, and he got defeated and thrown down in the Sarlacc pit, I wanted that to be the end. Like Luke and Han and Leia and R2 and 3PO defeated him.
Kind of in a chumpy way, though. Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, you're right. It was kind of lame, but still, it was supposed to be like, how was that supposed to be real danger for any of our heroes if it wasn't a danger for the bounty hunter? Okay, so all we know about Boba Fett up to that point is he's a ruthless bounty hunter that keeps company with the likes of Jabba the Hutt and Darth Vader.
And Darth Vader went out of his way to no disintegration. And then Boba Fett had to respond.
So we know that he's ruthless, and we know that Darth Vader counts on him to do his dirty work.
Yeah, and he has worked for Vader before, and he isn't dead, so he's good at his job, because Vader will kill you for missing the punctuation on the memo you send him in the morning.
We still need that. We still need that Death Star The Office series.
And apparently Boba Fett had disintegrated one of his previous targets and still didn't earn death from Vader on it, to a point where now it's a thing. It's like a gag between them. No disintegration.
Yeah. Hey, no disintegration this time.
Yeah. When are you going to let that go?
Okay. So our expectations are kind of high, because this is just another new set of characters, another area that we're exploring in this post-Return of the Jedi Star Wars universe. We already Boba Fett has this cachet of being a lesser character, but cool and kind of seen as interesting amongst a lot of the fans.
I will say right now that everything I wanted Boba Fett to be, Mando is instead from The Mandalorian. And Boba Fett's more approachable. He's more talkative. He's like this. The story of this series is he crawls out of the Sarlacc pit. He gets abducted by Tusken Raiders. He earns their respect from the tribe and gets trained and brought into that culture.
Sure. A la Dances with Wolves, a la Ferngully the Last Rainforest, a la Avatar, all of those things.
Well, I really appreciate
He's taken in by the natives and changes his heart and soul from being a ruthless bounty hunter to being connected with a group of people.
And I really like that they gave like a real rich depth to the Tusken Raiders, because in the cinematic universe up to that point, they were just the throwaway
caricatures.
Yes, they were stand-up bad guys. Oh, we like battle droids. We slaughter as many of these as we want. It doesn't impact the storyline because they're just saying
they don't have families. They don't have lives. They don't. They're just human-sized insects.
Yes, exactly. But no, we humanize them. They have a culture. They are a people, and they are important. And we saw all of that through the eyes of Boba Fett, the Outsider.
Yeah, they did pretty good with that. Like making you feel connected to the young ones, the elders, the teachers, all of those people.
Without speaking any of the language, which was awesome. And then the transitions, you're kind of doing it half and half, where Boba Fett's trying to put the pieces of Jabba the Hutt's old criminal empire back together. Basically, he walks in and says, "Oh, who's the boss? I'm the boss. That's right." And then just starts taking over.
Do you feel like you understood why?
Why he did that? His motivation, he said, was he was sick of working for people that were idiots. It's like, I'm sick of working for these fat, lazy, aristocratic bureaucrats that don't get it, that don't have the value. They're like, oh, go kill this guy. And they have no idea the effort that it's going to take to do that, or the fact that they are taking a human life merely because this person is inconveniencing them. So it was this weird mix of chaotic evil, not chaotic, of lawful evil, where he thought he could do a better job.
Okay. So is that where you would assign his characters, lawful evil?
Absolutely, yes. He has a strict set of codes that he's going to follow, but there's nothing that he's binding. Like, he's not bounded by any outside jurisdiction of what he is and is not willing to do.
Okay, so he comes across Fennec Shand, who's a character that we'd interacted with in some of the other properties and
in
stuff.
Mandalorian.
And who also, like him, had been left for dead.
Yeah, Mando was hunting her down in one of the episodes that he was on Tatooine and shot her and left her for dead in the middle of the Tatooine desert. Which, I mean, appropriately, if you're going to leave anybody for dead anywhere, it's going to be the middle of Tatooine. There's no way they're coming back. Except she did come back, because Boba Fett found her and dragged her off to some... I think it's hilarious that in his limited access to resources... Like, he's trying to get her medical attention. The best he could do is he found the equivalent of a cosmetic surgeon.
A tattoo parlor.
Yeah. He's like, well...
It looked like that.
It's like, I can't fix her, but I can replace her guts with robot guts. I'm like, well, okay, I guess that's going to have to do, Frankenstein.
Yeah, okay, so you're already getting to what I think to be one of the problems with the magic system of this additional property.
Okay.
But this isn't unique to the Star Wars universe. They're just overdoing it, and they do this a lot. Like, yeah, we'd already kind of established that Darth Vader and Luke had prosthetic limbs that looked, for all intents and purposes, to be a real limb.
Right.
But that's just a limb. It's not digesting your food or pumping your blood.
But theoretically, like, it's an extrapolation. I don't think that's breaking the rules. I think... If you can replace a guy's arms and legs with robot legs that are indistinguishable from the real thing, there's no reason you couldn't do it with other parts of the body too.
All right. So we got all these new characters, and if Mandalorian is a Western, this is like it's also a Western, but like you said, the character has a different alignment, and so it's more like I'm the new sheriff in town. It
felt like that. He's definitely not the sheriff, but it felt like it almost felt like Blazing Saddles in that way, where he walks into this established scene in this scenario, and then he has to like insert himself and assert his authority over it.
Now, it introduced some other characters. There's Chrysanthemum, who's just freaking awesome as just, you know, this like Wookiee thug that's like chaotic evil.
Yes, the gladiator Wookiee. That's great. I knew as soon as he walked on screen, like, there is no way that they're going to have a named Wookiee that is not going to be going to be here for the rest of the time.
Yeah. Now, overall, okay, so Mandalorian was seasons 1 and 2. kind of spaced out to keep the Disney Plus audience coming back. And then Boba Fett was like, I don't know, they were pausing, resetting on Mandalorian. They needed something else. And so Boba Fett was released in 2021. It didn't quite do as good as Mandalorian.
For a good reason. I don't know. Like, the reason that I love The Mandalorian, I think it hits so well, is that character development. Whether you knew it or not, like, the fact that Mando didn't talk a lot, the fact that he didn't have a face, it lets you fill in a lot of the blanks with your own, like, emotional stakes. And it was very well written, and, like, there was feelings there, character development. This one, like, there's a little bit of development with Boba Fett, but there's a lot more acting work to be done on, because you can see him the whole time. He is not the blank slate. You don't get to insert yourself into the scenario. This is clearly Boba Fett doing these things for reasons that may or may not jive or ring true with people. Like you asked me earlier, what were his motivations? Do you feel they were clear? The fact that you didn't have a strong sense of why he was doing what he was doing speaks to the fact that the storytelling wasn't as strong.
Yeah. I mean, they would give little, each episode is its own mini story. Like there was the train that was running drugs through their territory, and you could see how that was hurting the Sand People. And like I was very clear on his motivations when it came to those kinds of things.
Yeah, but his long-term goals, like why is he doing the things with Jabba's empire?
Why does he want to be the sheriff of this town?
Right.
So there's an interesting discrepancy. So this one was 66% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is really low, and 57% from the audience. So there's this 9-point discrepancy as opposed to the 2-point discrepancy on Mandalorian. So you can see a little bit more of this idea that maybe even if the critics saw there were some things to admire about it, the fans weren't pleased. Almost half.
Well, I will say this. The best episode of the Book of Boba Fett was episode 5, which was the bonus episode of The Mandalorian, where the entire episode we didn't see Boba Fett. We saw Mando learning about the Darksaber and meeting back up with Grogu after he dropped him off with Luke Skywalker. Yeah, it was just so great.
Yeah, I don't know how they planned that, but it was good. And then he crashes into Boba Fett and becomes part of the the big gang battle for the town at the end that they built up to for like 4 episodes.
Oh no, Boba Fett crashed into him. Boba Fett sent what's her face, Fennec Shah.
Fennec Shand to go recruit him and say, hey, I need some hired muscle because we're about to have a gang war.
Yes, and Mando's like,
Mando was like, I'm in.
Like, I got nothing better to do.
Awesome. Okay, so what's the magic system of the Book of Boba Fett?
It's the same.
I don't know. I feel like there's new ones, like not dying. Like everybody just doesn't die. Like in Mando, some people died, but in this one, like Boba Fett doesn't die. Fennec Shand doesn't die. The sheriff friend played by Timothy Oliphant doesn't die. Everybody just doesn't die.
There's Bacta. Like Boba Fett had his big Bacta tank that he had to sleep in for like a month to like heal all the Sarlacc acid burns. Apparently. There was the Rancor. Like he was gifted a Rancor. That
was a bit of the magic system too. Like Boba Fett had the I can talk to animals kind of thing.
Oh, the Predator respects the other Predators. Yeah.
I think that was supposed to be a big payoff, but it just didn't feel like it.
Well, because they didn't earn it. Like they dropped off the Rancor and they had a 10-minute conversation where they talked about how people used to ride these into battle. And I'm like, as soon as he said it, I'm like, he's going to ride this into battle in the last episode.
Okay, I got a great fact for you. Did you notice what actor was playing the Sarlacc trainer?
Ooh, no, I don't think it did.
Not the Sarlacc, the
Rancor trainer.
Rancor trainer. Did you notice who it was?
I did not. Who was that?
Danny Trejo.
Was it? Oh, you know what? As soon as you said that, yes, you're right. That was Danny Trejo.
Yeah, Danny Trejo was the Rancor trainer.
Love it. Oh, Danny Trejo. Yep. Sponsor the podcast. Trejo's Tacos.
Okay.
People.
So another part of what I felt like was the magic system was because we lived in this town on Tatooine where we had like these conflicting interests of people holding power, but none of them were particularly militaristic in nature. There was this situation of politics on a lawless planet. And it felt like I actually enjoyed some of that interaction. Like we're sitting in the room trying to form uneasy gang alliances, and they're like, "Are you going to be the powerful one, or is the new? Who should I align myself with? Who's good?" I'm trying to predict the winner of this conflict so that at the end I'm on the right side.
Yeah, I do like a couple of times where like he rolled in to talk to the mayor. It's like, "Oh, we're here to see the mayor. Oh, just 1 second. Let me know he's here." And like the door locks all engaged, and like, "Oh, son of a!" And they have to like basically kick in the door to go see him.
Yeah, I like that too. And the character that was played by the fast talking bureaucrat. I don't know who that actor was, but good job, that guy. He made me laugh a lot.
Oh, I think he's from Modern Family. I think
Oh, really?
I think he's the dad. Modern Family.
Okay. Yeah, they tried to do that again in Obi-Wan with an Indian actor, but I don't know, it didn't quite hit as well.
Oh, if you ever see that act, all right. So we're going to talk about Obi-Wan in a minute, but that actor, that's just how he acts. Like all of his characters.
Yeah, he was also one of the characters in that Eternals,
and he was exactly the same.
Yeah, same character.
Yeah.
Okay, so we kind of was it in? Yeah, it was in the Boba Fett episode where we went and saw Mando, and he went to go see Grogu and try to see if he just wanted to see him, but he was also kind of hoping that Grogu would come back, be done, and come back and be his friend again or whatever. And then he met Ahsoka. So we're kind of hinting now that Rosario Dawson's going to have her own spin-off series that's going to happen next year. Ahsoka Tano.
So we met Ahsoka originally. Are we talking about Ahsoka? No, strike that. I am talking about Ahsoka. So
okay,
we met Ahsoka in the second season of The Mandalorian in episode 3. Bo-Katan mentions her, and then we see her in episode 5. Oh, Ben, you don't know the awesomeness that is Ahsoka Tano. Okay, so in the series, the Clone Wars series, like she is Luke or Anakin Skywalker's Padawan. Okay. And Anakin and Obi-Wan are still like partners. They go do everything together. But Obi-Wan is very much the strategist. He's the high-level guy. He'll get his hands dirty, but he's always planning. Anakin is like the special forces like commander. It's like him and his guy Rex, which is his clone commander, and like a squad of guys and Ahsoka. And they're always doing like the impossible missions, like the wet work, like the crap that nobody thinks that you can do. And they're defying orders to get the job done. And like it really develops in Ahsoka's like act now, think later kind of mentality.
Okay, so she is Anakin's Padawan.
Yes, Anakin's Padawan. And what happens towards the end of the series, and this is so great for her character, is she gets framed for some crime, right? And she's 100% innocent, but they have faked evidence or whatever against her, and she's going up on trial. And she's telling the Jedi Council, I didn't do this. And they go, oh, no, we know you didn't do it. And she's like, then get me out of this. And they go, well, we can't. We have to obey the law. So if you're convicted, we'll have to follow whatever the conviction protocols or whatever are. And then at the end of this whole thing, like they get the evidence and they unveil the traitor or whatever, and she comes walking out of the trial free and clear. And the councils, the Jedi Council with Yoda and Mace Windu, and they're like, oh, it's so great that you got off scot-free. Welcome back. And she goes, no, screw y'all. You were going to let me hang for something you knew was wrong. I'm done with this. And she walks off. And so she never ended up actually becoming a Jedi, which is how she dodged Order 66.
Huh. Interesting.
All right, so then
she saw the destruction coming, but she didn't see it. She just like, no, you guys are corrupt. I'm not going to be part of this.
It's just like you guys. This was untenable. After everything that I've done for this order and for the Republic, and you were going to let me out to dry on a technicality. Now screw y'all.
Where would you put her on an alignment chart?
Ooh. Probably chaotic good.
Okay. All right. I like that. And Luke could work with that. He's like, all right, you can help me out here on whatever planet that was where we're training Grogu to be a Jedi.
There's also some weird time skip stuff that happens. She gets sucked into another like Force dimension, which is why she doesn't age a whole lot, whereas Anakin's an old man and she's kind of middle-aged. Also, there's like very important reasons why her lightsabers are white and no other color, but we don't have to get into that.
Okay. So Mando turns his Beskar spear according to his religion. Beskar can only be used for defense and not for offense. So he turns it into a cute little chainmail coat. Perfectly sized for Grogu.
We can have whistling birds that can kill everybody in a room come out of your wrist, but they can't be made of Beskar. That's not actually, but they were made of Beskar. Like she said, like, oh, I'll make you a pauldron, and then I'll take the rest and make those
you just
birds.
Found a flaw in the magic system.
You're right. Dang it.
Okay, so he gives it, and we have this dilemma that's happening in the Boba Fett series, where Grogu has to choose between continuing his training as a Jedi and going and joining Mando on whatever quest he happens to be on.
Which is a black or white logical fallacy. Luke puts that choice in front of him.
It felt like cheating to have Luke be like, all right, Grogu, you either, just like Yoda did to Luke in Empire Strikes Back, either you stay here and finish your training and let your friends die, or you go there and abandon your training and you can never be a Jedi.
Except Luke did end up becoming a Jedi after he went and abandoned everything that he thought he was going to do.
I know, but I think it was a self-reference to that same scenario, that Luke was doing the same thing that Yoda did to him, to Grogu.
I mean, it's an absolute false dichotomy. Luke could have gone with Grogu and then, as a Padawan.
Do you think Luke was doing it unknowingly? Like, he didn't realize he was doing the exact same thing Yoda did?
It's, the same way that you end up becoming your parents. That also shows later on in the movies, and this is obviously the movies where Mark Hamill had in the past failed at being a Jedi teacher, and now we're seeing that was the beginning. Like, we saw the bookends of it. Like, Grogu was his first student, and then we saw his last student, which was freaking what's his face? Oh gosh, from the new movies with the freaking crossguard lightsaber. Whatever, doesn't matter. Like, we saw the two ends of Luke's journey as an instructor in the Jedi arts, and they were both kind of failures. Like, he's not a good teacher is what we're getting across here.
Kylo Ren,
yes. So we see Grogu as his first student when he's trying to set up this Jedi Academy, and we see Kylo Ren as the last student he ever taught, and they're both kind of failures. And so from those 2 points, we can draw a line on a chart that indicates Luke is a bad Jedi trainer.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to talk about what you just described as a line on a chart, because that's one of my problems with what's happening here in the middle. Are we done talking about Boba Fett?
I think so. If we want to talk, we barely talked about Boba Fett. We kept talking about Mando.
Nah, we talked about it.
Okay. We talked about it as much as it deserves to be talked about.
It was fine. It was 66% fresh. I think that's a good estimate.
That is an excellent. Yeah, it's like, I'm glad I watched it. I'm probably not going to watch it again.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan suffers from the problem, I think, of the line on the chart. Much more so than Mandalorian and Boba Fett that are happening in kind of unknown space with characters that we don't know their destiny. We go back to Obi-Wan Kenobi. We know where he came from. We know where he's going to end up. And now we're just getting a little bit of his story that we've only had hinted at by a few objects and a few throwaway lines in the first movie.
Yes, and they were really bounded by that, because throughout the entire series, I was very aware that they cannot involve Luke in any of this, because Luke had no knowledge that Ben was a Jedi Knight before.
Okay, there was even a scene, and I didn't notice it, but one of my children did, where Obi-Wan was going to go see Luke, and he picked up a toy, and my son goes, "Hey, that's the toy that Mark Hamill was playing with in the original Star Wars in 1977.
Oh, that's outstanding.
Yeah, I was very impressed by that. I went and looked it up, and he was totally right. But I'm sure some prop designer went to great lengths to go and recreate that thing that Luke was playing with in the original Star Wars and show Obi-Wan getting ready to go give it to him as a gift.
Yeah, that's really nice. Good stuff there.
Yeah. So so I did some research on Obi-Wan Kenobi, and apparently Obi-Wan Kenobi was slated to be its own movie.
Oh.
But then Solo failed as kind of like a spin-off movie.
Okay.
And they axed it.
Okay.
And turned it into a TV movie that was going to be the next year's draw on Disney+.
Okay, so this actually answers a lot of the problems that I had with this show. Here is my thing.
It had pacing problems. It had story problems.
Here was my biggest problem with Obi-Wan, is that I couldn't reconcile this, because this is the first time I think this has ever happened, is I really liked the progressive character development that we saw in Obi-Wan, reconciling where he was at the fall of the Republic and where he was at the beginning of the movies. I think his character arc was phenomenal, but the rest of the storytelling was a disaster.
Yeah, I agree. It's because it was all made up after the fact.
Yeah.
Like, we knew where Obi-Wan had to start, and we knew where he had to end up, and then it was just a squiggly line in the middle, and it was just made by committee.
I was getting so sick of this, one episode is a whole new set piece. Every episode, we're just on a completely different planet with completely different stakes and characters.
Reason.
Yeah, and not just for no reason, but okay, Darth Vader caught up to us. Okay, so the first thing he's going to do, since he has literally all of the resources of a galaxy-wide empire, is blockade this entire planet with so many Star Destroyers, you're not going to be able to throw a rock without hitting one. And somehow you escape every time?
It was like a fourth, fifth wall break, it just, because the producers are like, well, it's a new episode, we need a new set, so let's let them get away. How did they get away? Doesn't matter.
Yeah. Details.
super easy, barely an inconvenience.
There was a great okay. There was one scene where Darth Vader walks into a hangar, and the shuttle that you presume that they're all on is taking off, and he force grabs it out of the sky, slams it back into the ground, and starts ripping giant chunks out of it with the force.
Yeah.
And then
so that's a magic system problem.
No, I'm okay with that. But the shuttle behind it that actually had everybody on it, that one takes off. And
that was a decoy. Boom, and they fly off, and he doesn't catch that one?
Darth, you're standing right there. I just saw you pull the other one out of the sky. You don't have another hand free? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, but that's breaking the second rule. Like, they showed us the limitations of the magic system and then didn't follow it.
Yeah. I will say I was very trepidatious. I'm going to talk a lot about Darth Vader because that was the coolest. Because for all of Star Wars history, we have this character that we all fear and this is the pinnacle of the bad guy,
the ultimate baddie.
But they never really he never gets to show himself off in like a high action kind of way. And we know he's kind of limited in his mobility because of all this artificialness that's about him. And so we only get like real brief snippets of him being like this undescribable force of evil.
Yes. It's the hallway scene from the end of Rogue One.
Yeah, that was.
It was just took your breath away with how much of an unstoppable force he was.
And for me in this series, there is a fight that he has with one of his underlings, and she's dual wielding red lightsabers, and she comes at him with everything she's got, and he doesn't even draw his lightsaber. He just like puts his palm up and is force stopping every swing that she throws at him, and like she just can't get any traction.
Yeah. Okay. And those moments are brilliant. That character was called Reva Savander. She was played by Moses Ingram. I wasn't impressed with that character or that thing. I want to read you something I read from an interview of one of the writers or producers. Okay. It said, long discussions were held before it was decided to include Darth Vader in the series.
Ooh. Okay.
And this decision was not made lightly. The original scripts featured different villains, including Darth Maul, but ultimately they decided not to use him as they felt it would be a little bit much to have both Maul and Vader.
What, the guy that was chopped in half would have had to have been 30 or 40 years before the events of this episode?
Okay. So you have what used to be a movie and then became a TV series, and you had what you knew, your main character, Obi-Wan, you knew he was supposed to be at the beginning, and you knew he was supposed to be at the end. And then they threw in this other storyline of this girl that turned out to be one of the younglings who saw her friends slaughtered during Order 66 in the temple. There was a lot of hinting to that in the first couple of episodes, and because they pace it so they don't all come out at once, you really got to wonder about it. They were calling each other cryptic names like Brother Number 5 and Sister Number 2 or whatever.
Yeah, I knew it as soon as we saw that. Like, I knew, like, oh, this is one of the younglings. But she explained it in words on screen to me, the viewer, and I still don't understand. You saw this guy kill every one of your friends.
You saw
and
Anakin Skywalker kill everybody. You know that Darth Vader's that guy. Why are you helping him?
Why did you decide, I must need to be on his side?
It doesn't make sense. I don't know how that cleared their original storyboarding.
Oh, and then she was going to kill Luke, and like, oh, I couldn't do it. Obi-Wan should have cut her in half right then. It's like, oh, thanks for not doing it. Wow, never have to worry about you again.
So we have 3 episodes of Obi-Wan kind of being the reluctant, I don't want to go do this. We got some respectable kid acting from kids playing Luke and Leia. And then we got 3 episodes of, like you said, just changing sets for no reason and kind of continued conflicts between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. All of that aside, while all of this was happening, I was really enjoying the meta stuff that was happening outside. There was these reunions of Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen and James Earl Jones and Mark Hamill, and just it was beautiful. I was enjoying the tweets, the videos, the Facebook posts, all of that stuff that was happening. It really just scratched an itch for me.
I don't.
Mandalorian didn't do that. This did. This was the original cast. It was or some of the core canon cast.
So here, I hate Hayden Christensen. Not him as a person, but the character he played as Anakin Skywalker.
That's George Lucas's writing.
Yeah, that's
problem,
the prequels destroyed the character of Anakin Skywalker for me. Like, again, the Clone Wars cartoons are a much better version. The Clone Wars cartoons, and this is I'm bringing this up for a specific reason. There is an episode where they show a flashback of Obi-Wan and Anakin having like a sparring contest with lightsabers, right? And in that is the Anakin Skywalker that I wanted in the prequel movies. It's the Anakin Skywalker that was in these Clone War cartoons. It was a very capable person that knew he was very capable, that got the job done, and was ultimately his downfall was not like the love of Padme. It was his frustration with the bureaucracy. It is, I can see what needs to be done. I can do it. Why are you stopping me?
I find that compelling, and I enjoy the prequels a little bit more because of that. Like we had this republic that was supposed to represent the will of the people and was ultimately kind of powerless. The only enforcement arm they had wasn't an army; it was just this special forces group that wasn't big enough to actually take any objectives. So you had this Senate that was arguing endlessly. He knew he had power, and he wanted to do something with it.
Yes, if we're talking about the motivation for turning somebody to the dark side, that is a much more compelling argument than
his wife was
than
sad.
The worst love story of all time. But this is
you're so right. It's painful to even think. It's a reason it's become such the awful memes.
Right, but then we get this flashback fight in the Obi-Wan series where Obi-Wan and Anakin are sparring, and you can see
that scene.
You can see the building frustration in Hayden Christensen's like Darth Vader character with just the like, I can do this. Why are you slowing me down?
And Obi-Wan being like, nope, you're not ready. You're showed that you're not ready.
Yes.
You're never going to be ready.
You're too aggressive. Calm down. Think more. Act less. And like that's just not who he was.
Now, those scenes, the lightsaber battle between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan, the lightsaber battle between them younger, flashback wise, those are great. The acting of Ewan McGregor of showing this character arc of this transforming from this Jedi at the peak of the Republic to this hermit of an old man living in the desert was so well acted. And so it was the highlight, I think, of that.
The first few episodes, he really sold that he just felt beaten. Like he had come from like the pinnacle of this civilization to hiding in a cave in the desert. And like you could tell he felt that to his core. Like he was barely keeping himself together. It was hard to get on that stupid camel and go cut those fish all day, every day.
Yeah. So this series was rated 83% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's
I think
generous.
Probably on the back of the acting performance. Yeah. That was by the critics who are looking at, the performances by James Earl Jones and Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen. These really top shelf actors doing some of their best work. The fan ratings of this series, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was 66%. That's a 17-point discrepancy. Why do you think that is? I can tell you know.
Well, and it's like I brought this up at the beginning. I feel like the character development, what we were supposed to care about was was Obi-Wan's journey with reconciling his actions that he felt responsible partially for the fall of the Republic. Because he didn't see this in his Padawan, because he didn't see this in his best friend, and because he didn't take stronger action. And so he had this crippling responsibility and this doubt and this just self-loathing almost. And to see him like get pulled out of that and slowly recover and get back to a shadow of what he was before was cathartic in a way. But that is contrasted with this hodgepodge vignette, one planet, then the next, that like I can't even tell what's going on this episode.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have what was going to be a movie and you turn it into a TV series and you're in a hurry because you need something to put out in 2022 to keep people subscribing to Disney Plus. That's the reason for this, pitch meeting series, why it's so funny, because as much as it's satire, it's also a bit true.
Yeah, if this entire storyline had taken place on like one planet, like if Obi-Wan went to the first planet that Leia had been taken to on that city planet, and the entire rest of the movie took place there, just moving around from place to place, it would have, made a lot more sense, but it would have been better suited for a movie. Because a movie's only going to be 90 to 120 minutes long. This was, 6-7 episodes that were all an hour long? Like, you can't stay on one set piece for 7 hours.
Yep. Well, some of my favorite movies from the prequels are lines and the character of Obi-Wan is played by Ewan McGregor. So I really enjoyed this for those reasons. He's just a good actor and really understands that character.
Did you laugh out loud when I forget when he did it, but at one point he actually did his classic line where he's just that chipper, Hello there. Yes. I laughed out loud.
Totally. It was great. Okay. Do you feel like there was anything different about the magic system of Obi-Wan? Like, this was much more about the Force. He was rusty. He'd kind of lost his edge.
Well, and that's because the Force is so tied to your personal emotional state. And, like, he felt like he was worthless, and so that manifested through his ineptitude.
So ultimately, we knew about the Force, and they were kind of counting on that. And he had to get back in touch with it so that he wouldn't just get overrun by Anakin, who's, like, at the peak of his powers.
Yes, I think they did fine with that. Like, I think that it facilitated the storytelling and that we could tell when Obi was getting his groove back, one. And then two, we didn't manifest any Force powers that we weren't expecting or that miraculously solved a problem out of nowhere, Deus Ex style, like the new series of movies did.
It was on the border. There was that scene where they were having that lightsaber battle out in the field and they started throwing rocks at each other. And Obi-Wan had that moment where he'd gotten down, knocked down, and it looked like Darth had defeated him. And then Obi-Wan had a flashback and then stood up and was rejuvenated and started throwing stuff. And it was like nothing that's ever happened in any lightsaber battle in the entire universe.
Well, I mean, yeah. We've seen Darth Vader throw stuff at people that he's fighting in a lightsaber fight before. He did that to Mark Hamill in Empire Strikes Back. He ripped some stuff off the wall and threw it at him. So it's an extrapolation that he's a little bit younger in this movie, so maybe he's got a little more machismo. And there were a bunch of rocks handy. I mean, why not?
Okay. So I did something that I feel will kind of wrap all this up, and we're going to have to do our religion as a meme talk next time.
I threw up my fingers because I thought of one more thing. So we keep talking about Boba Fett and Mandalorian as a Western. This felt a lot more like a samurai movie. And I'm thinking specifically of the scene where Darth Vader's climbing out of his shuttle, and then we have this wide shot of the two of them, lightsabers out, one on either side, one in like this open desert and the one like in this like rock forest. And he slowly turns his back on his opponent and walks into the forest, expecting the guy to follow him to fight to the death. That felt very samurai.
Okay, so what I want to do for these three films is the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
Since we're talking about them as Westerns and samurai movies, classic title of a Western and Western sheriff kind of thing, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, to me, the good is spending more time in the Star Wars universe, which I love.
I just want to take the whole Star Wars universe and wrap it around me like a warm, fuzzy blanket. Like, it's just so great.
Yeah. More time and new and interesting characters, like you said, the ones that just really, like I Have Spoken, character played by Nick Nolte, or This Is the Way, or just
yes. All right, if you listen, every listener that is hearing my voice that aspires to be some kind of creative storytelling person, we don't care about the stakes of the plot line. We care about the people in those situations. Focus on characters first. You can have, this is why Obi-Wan has that weird discrepancy, because the characters are phenomenal, but the storytelling is wishy-washy. But we still liked it. Like, the characters are what we care about.
Yep. And for me, maybe not, I can't speak for you, but for me also the beloved actors. I mean, while they're still around, having James Earl Jones voicing Darth Vader just brought chills down my spine all over again. Ewan McGregor was just chewing it up and doing awesome. Seeing Hayden Christensen again was great. Mark Hamill, Jimmy Smits, even Jimmy Smits from the prequels as the prince, the king from Alderaan. I'm trying to think of his name, Bail Organa. Yeah. Or even Owen Lars, the actor that played him, coming back. He did a great job. Ian McDiarmid as the Emperor, and even Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon Jinn, probably my favorite Jedi of all time.
Obviously you haven't spent enough time with Mace Windu, but yeah, seeing Liam Neeson there at the end, it's like, it's about time. It's like, have you been this whole time? Yeah, but you weren't ready to see me. Oh, thanks, Qui-Gon. One last lesson.
So seeing Obi-Wan and Darth Vader lightsaber fighting, or Anakin back in the prequels, it almost made me a bit nostalgic for the prequels. Like, I might go back and watch them again, give them another chance.
I mean, like, can we just watch certain scenes and like forget about everything else that happens?
And I think Obi-Wan had some John Williams scoring, and it really just tugs at your heart and just your inner child when you hear that. That's all the good. Do you got any good to add?
It was absolutely the characters. Like, number one, all time, always going to be the characters. The second is, I love that we have vehicles to explore the fringes of the Star Wars universe. like so many more people now know about like Mandalorian culture and just like how rich and deep and like there is so much there. Now look around the Star Wars universe. How many more untapped like wells of awesome storytelling exist out there? And now we have a vehicle for those. We don't have to have a blockbuster movie. We can just have a series where one episode we talk about these krill farmers on this swamp planet that are being attacked by an old AT-AT. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like an old Western.
Yes, exactly. So just having the ability to get more Star Wars, not just the Star Wars that we know and love, but like more of it.
Huh. All right, time for the bad. So they're spending too much time smack in the middle of a really well-known bit of lore.
Yeah.
You're just right in the middle of the Star Wars timeline. Like, Obi-Wan was really hobbled by it. You know exactly where he was when this started. You know exactly where he's going to be when it ends up. And it's like starting to watch The Sixth Sense, but they tell you in the first minute that the guy's dead, and you don't get to watch it one time.
Spoilers. God.
Yeah. Well, you introduced this idea in the last episode of the M. Night factor. I'm going to say that some of these, where you're exploring a well-known universe with known characters, where you know where they end up and you know where they start, and it's just going to be a little bit of a squiggly line in the middle, the M. Night factor is like 0.
I agree.
Like, you can't spoil it. You know what's going to happen.
It's not like, they can't go and chop Obi-Wan's leg off in a lightsaber fight with Darth Vader. Like, that just cannot happen. So, yeah, that part, for Obi-Wan specifically, that was a huge problem. Now, at the same time, I feel like for The Mandalorian, that could have been a strength. Because we knew kind of what was going on in the big universe. So we knew that, like, the Empire was gone, but not gone. And so we were informed about what was going on in, like, the large-scale sense. So they didn't have to spend time filling in those blanks for us. We could just focus on the story.
Yeah. Also, retcon galore.
Oh, geez.
Like,
yeah.
Just all over the place, going back and kind of fixing things to what they want them to be instead of what they were. Like, if you're going to do this and you're going to start out in the middle of the timeline, just accept it and try to find a way to tell an interesting story with the limitations you have instead of changing it. Like in the prequels when all of a sudden R2-D2 could fly. Like, stop it.
You just broke every scene that R2-D2 has ever been in. Leia was a problem for me in all of these because I'm like,
okay, why is that?
Just because like she's been exposed to a lot here. Like, look around, like she is learning a ton about like the old Republic, the Empire, the fall of it, like how things went down, some of the key players. She spent like a week with Obi-Wan basically holding her hand. And like, yeah, that informs the fact that she knew who Obi-Wan was.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only
hope. That informs that, but at the same time, it feels like she would have called him way earlier than this.
Yeah. I don't even... That's the problem.
Wait a minute.
You start off this story telling it in the middle, and then you say you're going to go back and tell the beginning of it, but it's still just a story. You can't imagine enough to fill in all the details.
I'm imagining Leia being inducted into the rebellion for the first time, and like, oh, you know what? Who would be great to recruit for this whole movement here? Like, that would be the first word out of her mouth is like, you need to go find Obi-Wan. He's on Tatooine. I've got a communicator that'll call him direct. Ugh.
Well, I did enjoy them picking a 10-year-old actress who did a cute, wonderful little job and making her be plucky and useful and interesting and kind of show the development of what her life might have been like that would lead her to be the character we saw at the beginning of A New Hope.
I also very much enjoy that Leia's force sensitivity power is knowing your deepest insecurity at a glance. Like, that's official canon now. She can meet you for 5 seconds, and if she's mad enough at you, she's going to go stone-faced and then tell you your deepest, darkest secret to your face. All
right. Well, also in the bad, there was a few not-so-great actors here and there. I don't need to name them. I've said a few. And the rules of magic, people, follow them. Like, yeah, you can err on the side of that, which is awesome, but you shouldn't every time. It just makes it so that nobody knows what's going on and there are no stakes.
The first couple episodes of Obi-Wan, we had this Grand Inquisitor guy that was shutting down our youngling grown-up now. And eventually she, cut him in half or killed him because she didn't want to take the glory. But then he, comes back in the last episode as a gotcha? So, wait a minute, you've just been hanging out in the fringes, giving me enough rope to hang myself. For what reason? I tried to kill you with a lightsaber. I feel like that's enough of a transgression to throw me in jail.
Yeah, so that leads to the ugly. So we've done the good and the bad. The ugly to me is like, does no one die in the Star Wars universe? Like, no one. Anakin, Darth Maul, the Emperor, Boba Fett, Fennec Shand, the Grand Inquisitor. It's ridiculous. Like, what? How can there be any stakes if getting cut in half and thrown down a bottomless pit isn't enough to end your existence?
I will say, I'm a little shaky on the timeline of Boba Fett. Like, he fell into the Sarlacc pit wearing his armor, and the Sarlacc had him in the pit long enough to, get all of the armor off of him and then vomit it up so somebody else could steal it. But he was still alive being digested and then somehow clawed his way out after that. Like, how did the Sarlacc's guts take his armor off? I'm misty on the details here.
Wow, your brain really goes to a different place than mine on that. I don't try to fill all those details in with the biology of some non-existent creature. I'm just like, whatever. They hand-waved on that one.
Well, this is like Star Wars loves their bottomless pits, but it's lore that if you're a Jedi, if you're a trained Jedi, falling from any height is irrelevant. You're going to land on your feet and be fine like a cat. So they get a little bit like, okay, that's fine. There are some other times, and Darth Vader lighting a giant fire and then force pulling Obi-Wan into it as recompense for leaping by the lava.
Yeah. It was supposed to be poetic justice.
But then Ewan McGregor walked away with no burns, no injuries, and somehow, he was 10 feet from Darth Vader and completely helpless, and somehow escaped the planet. Like, I get that Obi-Wan or that Darth Vader was like, oh, this wasn't my teacher. This is this pathetic thing. But I still don't think you would let him get away.
You can do that right. One of my favorite Marvel movies, Captain America: Winter Soldier, does this exact same thing where Steve Rogers has a confrontation with Bucky before he knows that he's Bucky, and they're together in close quarters and they fight, and they're coming to a stalemate, and then they get separated and they can't. It ends the chase. It happens 3 times in that movie. It's the same kind of thing. You need to build up the tension, but you can't resolve it right now, so you have to separate them. And if you can come up with a plausible plot device to do that, great.
Yeah, but in this case, we're so 2 super soldiers being separated by government-level agencies, they can sell that. That makes sense. People on the scale of Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, we saw Darth Vader in the next episode rip a starship out of the sky with his bare hand. But somehow...
Yeah, and he's 10 feet away.
And somehow somebody dragged him away. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, I have one last thought. And I apologize for not knowing the context of this, but you may have seen there were some tweets or some interviews or something where Taika Waititi, who just directed Thor: Love and Thunder, who I think has potentially been courted for directing a future Star Wars property of some flavor, basically went out and very publicly criticized a lot of what they're doing in Star Wars right now. And basically what he's saying is we got to get out of the Skywalker storyline. Yes. Star Wars is an interesting place, but it's so suffocating to be in the middle of this zero factor M. Night Shyamalan effect.
There's so much emotional baggage if you're tied down to any of these characters. That's what happened to the new movies. Like we talked about, The Force Awakening it was so good because they didn't try to tie themselves down to the old storyline. And then they got a new director, and they went right back to the old stuff, and then we got stuck with all these stupid plot holes and retcons. I agree with that. I think Taika Waititi hit the nail on the head. I said this earlier in the podcast. Star Wars is huge. There are untapped wells of awesome storytelling out there. Let's go find them.
All right. Well, let's hope that they do. I guess the next one will be Ahsoka. I wonder what her adventure will be. Hopefully it's not in the desert. I'm tired of Tatooine.
The only hope that I have for Ahsoka is that she manifests more of her adolescent attitude. She was a spitfire in those shows, and she's been very, very calm as an adult in these. I would rather that she was kind of sassy like she was before.
All right. Well, audience, if you're a Star Wars fan, maybe you have some opinions. There's plenty of places you can come and interact with us and let us know what they are. You can go on our subreddit at reddit.r/badatmagic, or you can go on our Facebook page, links in the show notes, and you can weigh in on the debate. Let us know what you thought of Obi-Wan, Boba Fett, and The Mandalorian, and give your opinions about what you think the future holds.
If you like what we do, share us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket right now and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. Unbelievable the visibility we get on that. if you want Ben and I to talk about Star Wars from now until the end of time, well, really, you probably don't have to do anything because we're going to do that anyway. But consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.